Chapter 1106. After everyone was seated, Zhang Xiaohu looked at Ming Qing and Gao Cunheng, who were still standing with uncertain expressions. He sneered and said, "I'm the leader of Misty School. Do you two not want to follow my orders? Of course we have to follow the orders of the leader of Misty School. However, we have to follow the orders of people who know how to repay kindness. I don't care about the orders of people who are ungrateful and don't know how to think about their origins." Gao Cunheng sneered as well. "Ha!" Zhang Xiaohu looked up to the sky and laughed. "If we follow the orders of the fragrant cult, then we know how to repay kindness. If we don't follow the orders of the fragrant cult, then wouldn't we be ungrateful?" Ming Qing nodded. "Since Leader Zhang has said so, it seems that you know the whole story. Since Leader Zhang knows how you got your position, then you should know what to do to get your position in jail. If you act on impulse, then you'll only be working for others." Gao Cunheng squinted his eyes and said, "Moreover, wasn't it the leader of the fragrant cult who bestowed upon you from Shirxin Peak to Misty Peak? If it weren't for the leader's benevolence, you would still be imprisoned in Shirxin Peak." "Ha!" Zhang Xiaohu laughed and clapped his hands. "What a gift! What a benevolence! Although your fragrant cult wasn't the main cause of the destruction of my Misty School, you were still an accomplice. Your disciples also have the blood of my Misty School disciples on their hands. Your disciples of the fragrant cult crippled countless of my Misty School disciples' martial arts and brought them back to the fragrant cult. Nominally, you were protecting the face of Leader O's wife, but in reality, who in Jianghu didn't know what Nun Jingyi was thinking? Moreover, instead of saying that Jingyi Nun was helping me rebuild my Misty School, it would be more accurate to say that she was building a branch for Xianxian cult. Yes, even if Nun Jingyi took in my Misty School's disciples, it can be considered as keeping the descendants of my Misty School and not being completely annihilated by the Righteous Alliance. Moreover, she sent you to assist my Misty School in taking back the ethereal peak. She can only make up for her mistakes, and even with my Misty School. Now you even want to meddle in the affairs of my Misty School and turn my Misty School into your puppet. As the leader of the Misty School, how can I tolerate this? I am grateful that Nun Jingyi promoted me to the leader of the Misty School, but I was originally a direct disciple of the Misty School. Even without Nun Jingyi's support, I can still be the leader." The more Zhang Xiaohu spoke, the more agitated he became. On the other hand, Li Jian and the others were more and more shocked. This was definitely not the time to fall out with the fragrant cult. They didn't know why Zhang Xiaohu was so impulsive. On the other hand, Ming Qing and Gao Cunheng were first shocked, then they sneered at the back of the mountain. In the end, there was a trace of a smile on their lips. When Zhang Xiaohu finished speaking, they clapped their hands and said, "Zhang Xiaohu, I didn't expect you to be such a hot-blooded man. These words, I think everyone here wants to say it, but you, the leader who is valued by our leader, actually dared to say it. I'm afraid that even our leader wouldn't have guessed it. However, this is also good. You, as the Grand Faction Master, are now highly respected in the ethereal sect. We and that faintly discernible person can't keep you in check? Let's ask the hierarch to decide whether we should replace you with someone else or punish you." Haha, I already said that the Misty School is the Misty School's Misty School, not the Misty School of the fragrant cult. The leader of the Misty School is decided by the disciples of the Misty School. How can Nun Jingyi be the leader of the disciples of the Misty School? Zhang Xiaohu said proudly. Then he looked at Li Jian and the others and laughed. You asked them, can I still be the leader of the Misty School? Ha! Lu Qingyang clapped his hands and said, Of course, you're the leader of the Misty School. If anyone disagrees, I'll be the first to settle the score with him. Yes, Zhang Xiaohu is the leader of the Misty School recognized by the disciples of the Misty School. He's definitely not someone the leader of the fragrant cult can casually decide. Haha, what a bunch of ignorant people. Just because you got some benefits, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think you can protect the Misty Peak with Hu Yuni and the other disciples of the Misty School? Do you think you can defy our leader's will? Ming Qing sneered and said to Gao Cunheng, Let's go, Deputy Leader G. Let's go back and discuss who will be the leader of the Misty School after Zhang Xiaohu is dismissed by our leader. Gao Kunheng wanted to continue, but he didn't dare to stay in the meeting hall alone. Just as he was about to leave with Ming Qing, he heard Li Jian's low voice. Do you two still want to leave? Why? The famous elderly, do you still want to keep us here? Ming Qing turned around and said disdainfully, if it were a few years ago, perhaps I would still feel apprehensive. But now, I only need a finger to crush you to death. I spared your lives only because I didn't know Lord Cult Leader's plan and didn't dare to act rashly. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Elderly, sit down, Zhang Xiaohu said in a low voice. But Li Jian didn't understand, but he still sat down. Ming Qing looked at Zhang Xiaohu and said with a smile, Zhang Xiaohu, it's too late to wake up now. You can be the leader for a few more days. He laughed and walked out of the meeting hall. Ding Chao Du Feng, pass down my order. Reinforce the defense outside the Misty Mountain Villa. No one is allowed to leave the Misty Mountain Villa, and no news is allowed to spread from here. When Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng walked out of the meeting hall, Zhang Xiaohu immediately ordered them. Yes, your subordinates will personally take the shift. Du Feng and Ding Chao looked at Zhang Xiaohu with admiration as they replied in a clean and efficient manner. Martial Ancestor Li, Martial Ancestor Lu, Master. You can talk to Brother Chu first. I'll be right back. Zhang Xiaohu didn't dare to delay and stood up. Leader, this is... Chu Yunfei was surprised by Zhang Xiaohu's courage and asked curiously. Brother Chu, I've embarrassed myself in front of you. My Misty School is still under the control of the disciples of the Fragrance Cult. I'm the leader in name only. Perhaps it's time to deal with it. Sit down and talk to your martial uncles and martial ancestors. Tell them about Martial Ancestor Hu's situation. I'm sure Martial Ancestor Li has been wanting to ask about it for a long time. As Zhang Xiaohu spoke, he hurriedly walked out of the meeting hall. However, in the time it took to eat a meal, so many changes had happened in the meeting hall. Even though Li Jian had experienced a lot of things, he couldn't understand what Zhang Xiaohu was thinking. He could only think about how to deal with it tonight. Therefore, he didn't pay much attention to Chu Yunfei's words. After Zhang Xiaohu left the meeting hall, he immediately rode a horse and rushed to Huanxi Mountain Villa. He was afraid that if he was late, Zhang Xiaohua would disappear. Fortunately, as soon as he entered the small courtyard, he heard the laughter in the hall. Wasn't Zhang Xiaohua's voice among them? Seeing Zhang Xiaohu rushing over, Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, Didn't your Misty School have a happy occasion? How come it's over so quickly? Zhang Xiaohu walked to Zhang Xiaohua in a few steps, grabbed her and whispered, Come with me quickly. I have something important to do. Guo Sufei and the others saw Zhang Xiaohu rushing in, and directly looking for Zhang Xiaohua without greeting them. They knew that Zhang Xiaohu was anxious and hurriedly said, Xiaohua, go quickly. Don't make things difficult for your second brother. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and followed Zhang Xiaohu to her house. Zhang Xiaohu immediately asked, Do you still have any leftover soul-absorbing pills? Yes, I still have some left. Didn't I just test a few in the morning? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. That's good. Zhang Xiaohu said with a happy face. Go now and let Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng take the soul-absorbing pills like the disciples of the Righteous Alliance in the morning. What's wrong? Second brother, isn't it? Zhang Xiaohua still wanted to ask, but Zhang Xiaohu pushed her and said, There are so many other people first. If you don't want Abbess Jingy to take your second brother's life, quickly settle these two people. All right. Seeing that Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng were already threatening Zhang Xiaohu's life, Zhang Xiaohua didn't ask any more questions and turned to leave. After Zhang Xiaohua left, Zhang Xiaohu put his hands behind his back and paced back and forth in the house. After pacing back and forth a few times, he still couldn't calm down. Thus, he made up his mind and closed his eyes to calm down. Then, he started practicing the Arhat Fizz technique in the house. Just like in the Lotus Flower Escort Agency's house, he practiced every move meticulously. Strangely enough, when he was halfway through practicing the 6 harmonies fist technique, Zhang Xiaohu's anxious moods slowly calmed down, and he put all his energy into practicing the 6 harmonies fist technique. After practicing for an unknown period of time, a voice sounded from behind him. He, second brother's 6 harmonies fist technique has a deep understanding of the samadhi. You have improved quite a bit compared to when you were at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. Yes, the fist doesn't leave the hand, and the song doesn't leave the mouth. Only with more practice can there be results. Zhang Xiaohu replied. After finishing the last few moves, he asked, "How was it? Did you manage to settle the matter?" "Ha!" Zhang Xiaohua said softly. "Of course it was easy." Seeing Zhang Xiaohu's relieved expression, he said, "When I saw the two of them, they were discussing how to report this matter to Abbess Jingyi. Second brother, I didn't expect you to have such guts. If I didn't have the soul-absorbing pill, I'm afraid this matter would have been reported to Abbess Jingyi." Zhang Xiaohu said self-deprecatingly. "How would I have the guts? It's just that after seeing the effects of the soul-absorbing pill in your hands, I was emboldened. These two people would have to be dealt with sooner or later, so I might as well do it earlier. Second brother is right. Since Elder Hu sent people here, they might be back soon. Having a disciple of the incense cult in the Misty School is like having a fishbone stuck in one's throat. No one would be comfortable with it. However, with the changes in Yaoshan, maybe Abbess Jingyi will come as well. I just don't know if the soul-absorbing pill can fool Abbess Jingyi's eyes. It's okay, Xiaohua. If Abbess Jingyi sees any flaws, I will bear all the responsibility. I definitely won't implicate you. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend at Chidian.com. -4. Chapter 1107. Hearing Zhang Xiaohu's words, Zhang Xiaohua's heart warmed. He smiled proudly and said, "Second brother, you've underestimated your brother. You've just stepped onto the path of immortality, but I've been cultivating for a long time." Zhang Xiaohu rolled his eyes at him and said, "Even if you're stronger than me, you've only been cultivating for a few years. Nun Jingyi has been immersed in the path of immortality for decades. How can you be her opponent?" Then he sighed and said, "Before entering the path of immortality, I couldn't see the difference between you and me. But when I saw the shadow of the path of immortality, you ran away from me long ago. You've only been cultivating for a few years, but you already make me feel irresistible. Do I still need to tell you how powerful Nun Jingyi is?" Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. He thought for a while and said with a smile, "The path of immortality. Oh, you can't just talk about cultivation. Everything in this world has to be done step by step. Only then can you reap the rewards. As the saying goes, a drop of sweat is a reward. However, if it's like this, people can only rely on hard work. The so-called intelligence and wisdom can't count. There are many things that require hard work, but at the same time, skill, comprehension, and opportunity are also important. Needless to say about skill and comprehension, second brother also understood this when he was practicing martial arts. Just the 6 complementary fists alone will make a difference between others and you. And in the path of immortality, what's most important is fate. For example, second brother, you only needed to kowtow 9 times to enter the path of immortality. But what about me? That's a lot of hard work. Can't you tell others about the hardships involved? Even if it was very hard for me, now that I think about it, there were many opportunities and coincidences. If it weren't for that, I would still be a servant in Huanxi Manor. Of course, I don't know about the inheritance of the incense cult. But looking at the 3rd floor of your Misty School's inheritance pavilion, you should know how difficult it is to step onto the path of immortality. Stepping onto the path of immortality is such a difficult thing for ordinary people. But for you, you passed it in a flash. Then what about the path of immortality? Aren't there many opportunities in it?" Zhang Xiaohu was enlightened and nodded slightly. "I kind of understand now. You mean that you've had a lot of opportunities. Although you've only been cultivating for a few years, your cultivation is no weaker than Abbess Jingyi's? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Fighting in the Immortal Tao is different from fighting in the martial Tao. Cultivation is one aspect, magic tools are another, and fighting strategy is a big help. That's why Abbess Jingyi and I don't fight, so I can't say who's stronger and who's weaker. But one thing I'm sure of is that Abbess Jingyi won't be able to catch me. And that's good. Zhang Xiaohu breathed a sigh of relief. I always thought that you were far inferior to Abbess Jingyi. Hee, that's because he hid it well. Zhang Xiaohua's tail began to stick up. Now that the qi of heaven and earth is scarce, none Jingyi and the others can't achieve great success by relying on the qi of heaven and earth. They can only rely on a limited number of primordial stones. How high can their cultivation be? Primordial stones? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. What's that? Hee, there's no need to rush to find out. Second brother, let me ask you, how's your cultivation of the broken blade force and the Kunping transformation? Zhang Xiaohu said with a bitter face. I've already understood the broken blade force. It's just how to convert the inner strength of the martial Tao into the Immortal Tao's true qi and use the martial Tao's true qi. You said it yourself that I only need to know how to use true qi. I've already done that. But the Kunping transformation is a bit troublesome. When I released my perception, I could only sense strands of true qi around me. When I guided those strands of true qi into my meridians, I couldn't feel anything at all. Then what's next? How do you refine the true qi after it enters your body? Didn't I tell you to make the same assumptions as the martial Tao? Do you feel like you've already guided the true qi into your meridians? I've tried, but it's like punching the air. There's no force behind it. I can't refine true qi at all. Oh. Zhang Xiaohua nodded, then asked again. Then, have you tried to refine the true qi in your dantian? Zhang Xiaohu shook his head. I don't know how to refine it at all. How can I refine Founder Yang's true qi? Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua let out a long sigh, her face full of bitterness. Zhang Xiaohu was shocked. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Yes, there's a problem, a big problem. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. My life is really bitter. When I entered the Immortal Tao, I had to figure everything out myself. I'm not like you. You only have to tell me and I can explain it to you and point you in the right direction. Having a master is really good. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu finally felt relieved. He curled his lips. How about? I call you master too? Don't. Zhang Xiaohua quickly waved her hand. If you call me that, won't mother beat me? As she spoke, she took out a small primordial stone and handed it over. This is the primordial stone. Isn't this a small stone? Is it the thing you put in the water tank? Zhang Xiaohu was curious. Then he realized. So, the spring water that father and mother drink has the primordial qi of heaven and earth. Hee, no wonder mother and father, and Mr. Lu don't look old at all these years. They even look a few years younger. Yes. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and explained what the primordial stone was. Then she lowered her voice and told Zhang Xiaohu how to absorb the primordial qi from the primordial stone. Zhang Xiaohu was very happy. With this primordial stone, he didn't need to absorb the primordial qi of heaven and earth into his body. Then, the effect of his cultivation would be very different. At this time, he also understood what Zhang Xiaohua meant by opportunity and cultivation. Also, second brother, the Immortal Tao true qi is different from the martial Tao inner force. You haven't refined your own true qi in your meridians, so don't show your Immortal Tao cultivation for the time being. Okay. I know what to do. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. Alright, second brother, go do what you need to do. I'm also going to go refine pills. Zhang Xiaohua stood up and stretched with a smile. Thank you for your hard work, Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohu looked at his little brother who never let him say thank you, but he still said the word, thank you. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, It's nothing. I have nothing to do anyway, so why don't I refine pills for fun? Gosh, Zhang Xiaohu was very jealous for no reason. Let's not talk about Zhang Xiaohua treating refining pills as a game, and let's not talk about Zhang Xiaohua's discussion with Zhu Yunfei. Thousands of miles away in the Dalan Temple, because of the Yaoshan Immortal Abode's matter, Abbot Changgung brought Great Master Changgung, Great Master Changxing, and a group of elites to Yaoshan Immortal Abode. Only Great Master Changhui of the Great Wisdom Hall was left to guard the temple. Great Master Changhui was a thin old monk. His eyebrows and beard were only white. At this time, he was sitting in the Great Wisdom Hall, carefully reciting Buddhist scriptures. A burst of hurried footsteps sounded. A young monk hurriedly ran in with a face full of fear. "Great Master! Great Master!" The moment the monk entered the courtyard, he shouted. Great Master Changhui frowned slightly, but his face remained benevolent. When the monk entered the room, he reprimanded. "Yuan Qing, as a Buddhist disciple, a tranquil mind is the foundation. How can you achieve greatness if you are so impetuous?" "But—" Yuan Qing wanted to defend himself, but Great Master Changhui flicked his sleeve and said, "Stand by the side and breathe carefully. Let me finish reading this scripture first." "But—" "Yes, Great Master." Yuan Qing stopped his pointless argument and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He pressed his palms together and lowered his head to look at the ground. His rapidly heaving chest gradually calmed down. Seeing how obedient Yuan Qing was, the corners of Grand Master Zhan Hui's mouth curled up into a smile. He sat down steadily and flipped through the scriptures. After half a cup of tea's time, Grand Master Zhan Hui finally raised his head and slowly said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" "Yuan Qing?" "Great Master, there's a change in the pagoda forest." The origin returning pagoda suddenly emitted a bright light. Yuan Qing seemed to have already prepared his words. His answer was simple and clear. "What? The origin returning pagoda emitted a bright light?" Great Master Chan Hui's expression changed drastically. He reprimanded, "Why didn't you inform me of such an important matter earlier?" However, before he could finish his sentence, Great Master Chang Hui stood up and used his top-notch qigong to cross the river on a reed. His figure was like a fluttering bamboo leaf. With a whoosh, he dashed out, leaving only an afterimage in front of Yuan Qing's eyes. "Ah!" Yuan Qing was clearly stunned by Great Master Chan Hui's qigong. After a while, he regained his senses and praised in admiration. "As expected of a great master. Your qigong is unparalleled. Even your ability to remain calm is something I can't compare to." With that, Great Master Chang Hui left the Wisdom Hall. His figure flashed as he headed straight for the temple's entrance. However, before he could reach the temple's entrance, he saw a faint Buddhist glow rising into the sky from the pagoda forest behind the Dalan Temple. In the Dalan Temple, the monks all had different expressions. Some were surprised, some were delighted, and some were terrified and sad. Although their moods were different, they all left their meditation areas and swarmed towards the temple's entrance. Needless to say, they all wanted to see the strange situation in the pagoda forest. Great Master Chang Hui lagged behind. Seeing this, Great Master Chang Hui couldn't help but feel a little angry. Just as he was about to reprimand Yuan Qing, he looked up and saw many bald heads gathering outside the temple. In the time it took Yuan Qing to report to him, many of his disciples had already arrived at the pagoda forest. Therefore, he couldn't be bothered to ask his disciples to turn back. He took a deep breath and circulated his inner strength, speeding up his pace. When he arrived at the pagoda forest, he couldn't help but gasp. He saw the origin returning pagoda, which was built against the mountain, emitting a faint Buddhist glow that illuminated the surroundings. The Buddhist glow was divided into 9 colors, and in each color, there were countless fairies, Buddhas, halls, lotus flowers, yakshas, and other objects. These images rippled with the colors as they swayed slightly. They appeared lifelike, as though they were about to shed their colors. Looking up into the sky, at the top of the origin returning pagoda, there were flames that soared into the sky like a torch burning 1,000 feet in the air. In the flames there were countless people and objects. These people and objects were constantly changing, like an independent Buddhist kingdom that was displaying the incomparable power of the Buddhist Dharma. Please cast a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a bookmark, and a tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you are welcome to cast a recommendation vote or a monthly vote at Chidien.com. -4. Chapter 1108. Ahmed Ba. Excellent, excellent. Seeing this, Master John Hui clasped his hands together and bowed his head, secretly praising. Buddhism is boundless. John Hui, are you in the temple? Where are Chongqing and the others? A loud voice came from the upper left side of Master John Hui. Ah? Master Yuan Dao? Master John Hui turned his head and saw a monk who was much thinner than him floating in the air. He couldn't help but exclaim. However, when he looked behind him and saw 2 other old monks floating in the air, he was even more shocked. Master Yuanming, Master Yuan Wu, you have all come out. How can we not know about the changes in the Guiyuan Tower? How can we hide and cultivate peacefully? A monk's voice was a little hoarse. Where is Chongqing? Is he not in the temple? Yes, Master Yuanming. Abbot Chongqing left the temple long ago with junior brother Chongqing and senior brother Chongqing, as well as a group of disciples in the temple. Eh? Such a big commotion? What are they doing there? Master Yuan Wu, according to the disciples' report, a 7-colored radiance has appeared in Yao Mountain recently. It's rumored that an immortal treasure has appeared. Abbot Chongqing brought the disciples to investigate. An immortal treasure? Master Yuan Wu frowned and nodded slightly. Then we should go and take a look. Don't let that thing fall into the hands of others. Yes, Abbot Chongqing said so too. That's why he let the disciples stay in the temple while he brought the elites of the temple to Yao Mountain. He wants to bring the immortal treasure back to the Dalan temple and keep it by Buddha's side. Master Yuan Wu ignored him and looked at Yuan Ming and Yuan Dao. The 3 of them were expressionless. Master Yuan Wu, this Guiyuan Tower. After waiting for a while and looking at the Buddhist radiance for a while, Master John Hui probed. According to the records in the temple, the Dalan temple has a teaching. The appearance of the Buddhist radiance in the Guiyuan Tower is a Guiyuan tribulation. All accomplished monks will have to face this tribulation. I wonder, how will the Dalan temple deal with this? Master Yuan Dao was expressionless. He looked at the soaring radiance, and the Buddhist kingdom in the radiance, and said, How will we deal with it? We've already dealt with it. What else can we do? This? Grand Master Zhan Hui was slightly taken aback, but he immediately understood. He put his palms together and chanted. This disciple understands. Excellent, excellent. As he spoke, the Buddhist light on the origin returning tower shone brightly, as if it was about to burn. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black fog abruptly appeared from the bottom of the Buddhist light. The moment the black fog appeared, it turned into a black thread that wrapped around the bottom of the Buddhist light. Then they saw the black line move upwards, bit by bit, gradually engulfing the Buddha's flame. The originally 9-colored light slowly turned black. When the entire Buddha's light was dyed black, the surroundings of the pagoda forest became gloomy. The monks could not help but shrink their necks. After the Buddhist light turned black, its shape began to change. After a while, it gradually stabilized. From afar, it looked like a black lotus. Origin returning tribulation. This is the origin returning tribulation, Master Yuan muttered. Although the Buddhist Dharma is boundless, it doesn't transcend those who are not fated. Only by facing the tribulation with one's body can one cultivate the boundless tribulation and transcend the boundless. That's right. Buddha is merciful. He faced the tribulation with his body and transformed into a Buddhist lotus. He underwent nirvana with the demonic tribulation, bathing in the demonic flames to be reborn. This is the origin returning tribulation. The black fire lotus verified Master Yuan Dao's mutterings. With a few swaying motions, it suddenly converged. The origin returning tower returned to its original appearance. The surrounding sky and white mountains also returned to their original colors. Master Zhan Hui had only read the manuals and had never seen it before. At that moment, he was dumbfounded by what he saw. When he saw such a mesmerizing scene, he could not help but exclaim. Following that, he rubbed his eyes in disbelief and exclaimed again. Eh? This was because in his eyes, the origin returning tower seemed to have suffered damage to its yuan qi. It looked like a person, a lot more dispirited. How? How is this possible? Master Zhan Hui was about to take a closer look when he saw a figure transform from behind the origin returning tower and fly straight towards them. Who? Who is this? Master Zhan Hui was completely dumbfounded. Today was truly an eye-opener for him. There was actually a monk with a cultivation level higher than Master Yuan Dao and company? Of course, the figure quickly arrived in front of him. It was a bald monk. Could it be the one from the origin returning tower? Master Zhan Hui's heart skipped a beat. However, when he saw the monk's face gradually turn clear, Master Zhan Hui could not help but feel puzzled. Why? Why does this old monk look so familiar? But where have I seen him before? Not only was Master Zhan Hui puzzled, all the monks in the Dalan temple were dumbfounded. Only Master Yuan Dao, Master Yuan Ming, and Master Yuan Wu, who were floating in midair, showed reverence when they saw the old monk. They conjured their dermic powers and went forward to welcome him. When they came close, they pressed their palms together and bowed. Greetings, Master Heavenly Dipper! Master Heavenly Dipper! He is Master Heavenly Dipper! Master Zhan Hui let out a sound from the bottom of his heart. The expression on his face was immediately replaced by reverence and desire. It was as if he had seen a figure from a dream. Master Zhan Hui could not help but feel reverence for him. Master Heavenly Dipper was 3 generations older than Master Zhan Hui and was also from the Prajna Hall. He was a famous figure in the pugilistic world 100 years ago. His cultivation in the way of immortality was comparable to the previous Sakra of the Tenrya sect. In the stories of the Dalan Temple 100 years ago, Master Heavenly Dipper was almost always the main character. His limelight completely overshadowed the abbot of his generation. He was almost the representative of the Dalan Temple. 100 years ago, the pugilistic world might not know who the abbot of the Dalan Temple was, but it was impossible not to know the name of Master Heavenly Dipper from the Prajna Hall. However, later on, Heavenly Dipper killed his way to the Tenrya sect alone and wanted to fight with the leader of the Tenrya sect, Sakra, to see who was the most powerful person in the world. However, Heavenly Dipper never returned. No one in the pugilistic world knew the result of that battle, and no one knew who was the most powerful person in the world. The Tenrya sect also did not announce the result of that battle. However, not long after, the Tenrya sect ceased all activities in the pugilistic world and lost a lot of their arrogance. Master Zhan Hui grew up listening to the legends of Master Heavenly Dipper. Now that he saw the real person, how could he not be shocked? An all-powerful figure 100 years ago had actually survived until now. Master Heavenly Dipper descended to the same height as Master Yuan Dao and the rest. He also bowed slightly and said in a low voice, "Have you seen the origin returning tribulation? This disciple has seen it, please enlighten me." Master Heavenly Dipper shook his head. "This old monk has nothing to enlighten you on. The last origin returning tribulation was 100 years ago. This old monk's cultivation is not high, so I did not go deep into the pugilistic world to face the tribulation. The Dalan Temple did not have many changes, and the pugilistic world did not have any big waves. This is the first time this old monk has seen it, just like all of you." Then, he turned to look at the origin returning tower and said, "This old monk felt the change in the qi of heaven and earth and rushed over immediately. I saw the whole process of the origin returning tribulation, but the origin returning tower is a space of its own. Divine sense cannot enter, so this old monk also does not know what happened inside. Then, how should we face the tribulation?" Master Yuanming asked carefully. "Didn't Changxing already go out? Yao Mountain has a magical treasure of the Immortal Tao, causing the entire pugilistic world to be in an uproar. This is the place where we face the tribulation. We will follow Master's instructions and leave the temple to search for Martial Nephew Changxing. You all go first. This old monk will go when the time is right." After Master Heavenly Dipper finished speaking, he flew in front of Master Zhang Hui and said with a smile, "Zhang Hui, you bear the heavy responsibility of guarding the temple, so you don't have to face the tribulation. Take care of yourself." "Yes." Master Zhang Hui bowed and lowered his head. When he looked up, Master Heavenly Dipper had already flown into the Dalan Temple in the direction of the Sutra Depository. Ah! Master Zhang Hui finally remembered. Wasn't Master Heavenly Dipper the old monk who swept the floor of the Sutra Depository? Ever since he was young, he had been sweeping the floor of the Sutra Depository. "It's all right," Master Zhang Hui recalled. Although he was surprised by Master Heavenly Dipper in the Sutra Depository, he had always been respectful and did not show any disrespect. Master Yuan now, Master Yuaning, and Master Yuan looked at each other and lowered their heads, saying, "Martial nephew Zhang Hui, we'll leave the Dalan Temple to you. Discipline your disciples and take care of yourself." "I understand." Master Zhang Hui pressed his palms together and bowed. "I wish the three of you a speedy return from the tribulation." Master Yuan now and the others nodded slightly. With a flick of their sleeves, they floated into the air and gradually disappeared into the distance. Seeing the three masters' backs disappear, Master Zhang Hui waved his hand and shouted, "Disciples, return to the temple immediately. Without my permission, you are not to leave the temple." "Yes." The disciples of the Dalan Temple finally heaved a sigh of relief. They did not know about the origin returning tribulation, so their eyes were filled with curiosity and passion. In just a moment, the Dalan Temple's forest of pagodas returned to the silence that had remained unchanged for tens of thousands of years. Not a single monk remained in the Dalan Temple. However, what remained unchanged was the surface. What about the inside of the forest of pagodas? What about the inside of the origin returning tower? Who would know? Perhaps the cold wind that had remained unchanged for tens of thousands of years and the setting sun that had remained unchanged since time immemorial would reveal everything that no one knew. Outside Pingyang City, in the meeting hall of the Ethereal Heights, Chu Yunfei was telling Li Jian and the others about the actions of the young disciples of the Misty School led by Hu Yuni over the past few years. Just then, he saw Zhang Xiaohu walk in with a relaxed expression. "Sect Leader Zhang." Chu Yunfei stood up politely. When Li Jian and the others heard this, they also turned around and hurriedly stood up. Wen Wahai took a few steps forward and asked with concern, "How is it? Xiaohu, what did we do?" While Zhang Xiaohu was away, Wen Wahai thought of all the possible solutions. They could only silence them by killing them. However, putting aside the fact that Zhang Xiaohu's martial arts were not good enough, even if they killed the two of them, how would the disciples of the Misty School be able to deal with the disciples of the Fragrance Cult who were on par with them in terms of strength? The young disciples of the Misty School and the older generation of disciples who had recovered some of their martial arts were only slightly stronger than the disciples of the Fragrance Cult. Seeing his master's concern, Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "Don't worry, master. Don't worry. Please vote for me. Please add me to your collection. Please tip me. Thank you." -4. Chapter 1109. Li Jian, Wen Wahai, and the others sat down with a belly full of questions. However, Lu Qingyang jumped out of his chair and laughed. "Gang Leader Zhang, how did you deal with those two little bastards? You must have a good talk with me." Before Zhang Xiaohu could speak, Chu Yunfei said in surprise, "Grandmaster Lu, your injury?" Then, he walked up to Lu Qingyang and said with a look of surprise and disbelief, "I heard that after the battle at Misty Peak, after Grandmaster Hu took us away from the back of the mountain, all the disciples were captured. Except for those with weak martial arts, all of them were crippled of their martial arts. Grandmaster Lu, didn't you have your joints crushed and collapsed, unable to stand? Could it be the rumors in Jianghu are wrong? Oh, I forgot." When Lu Qingyang heard this, he immediately slapped his forehead and jumped back to his seat. He then yelled, "Chu Yunfei, which eye of yours saw me get up?" Chu Yunfei was stunned and didn't know what to do. Li Jian looked at Lu Qingyang and then at Zhang Xiaohu and said angrily, Get up, old Fifth Lu. Chu Yunfei is not an outsider. If he saw you, he saw you. Don't pretend any more. Lu Qingyang still got up and said shamelessly. Second brother, you asked me to get up. Don't blame me if the news is leaked. Zhang Xiaohu had already sat down on the faction leader's seat. Looking at Li Jian's questioning eyes, he said with a smile. Elder Lu, please get up. This is for the disciples of the incense cult. There's no reason to hide it from Brother Chu. I'll get up. Lu Qingyang jumped up again and shouted. Faction leader Zhang, tell me, how did you subdue those two little bastards? Zhang Xiaohu spread out his hands and said with a smile. Nothing else. Just facts and reason. Ah? That's it. Lu Qingyang didn't believe it. You didn't use your fists? Zhang Xiaohu looked like he didn't care whether he believed it or not, and said, That's it. What can I do to them? But... Lu Qingyang was about to say something when Li Jian scolded. If clan leader Zhang says it's okay, then it's okay. Old Fifth Lu, don't ask too much. Okay. Lu Qingyang murmured, but his heart was tense. He had never heard such a convincing person. Hall Master Qin, find someone to call Du Feng and Ding Chao back. Zhang Xiaohu instructed. Yes, although Aunt Qin didn't understand, she still answered. Ancestor Lu, your injuries, what's going on? Chu Yunfei still didn't forget to ask. It's nothing, that's all. I don't know myself, that's all. Seeing Li Jian winking at him, Lu Qingyang didn't know how to answer and could only mumble. Then, what about Master Ancestor Li? Chu Yunfei asked, unwilling to give up. Li Jian smiled and said ambiguously. It's hard to say. Brother Chu, you don't need to ask too much. Right now, my Misty School is in a delicate situation, and there are many things that I can't explain to you in detail. You only need to know that the current Misty School is the same as the previous Misty School. The incense teaching is only a test for my Misty School. Now that the test is about to end, I represent all the disciples of the Misty School to welcome Elder Hu back to Misty Mountain Villa with another group of disciples. Although Chu Yunfei didn't get what he wanted to know, looking at Li Jian's smile, Lu Qingyang, who was standing steadily beside him, and the smiling faces of Wen Wahai, Shui Qing, and Lu Yueming, how could he not know that a major change had occurred? Li Jian and the others didn't say anything, not because they didn't trust him, but because they were afraid that the news would leak out and affect the revival of the Misty School. This disciple knows, this disciple knows. This disciple will definitely pass this news on to Master Ancestor Hu? Chu Yunfei was so happy that he was incoherent. At this time, a disciple entered the meeting hall and whispered a few words in front of Aunt Qin. Aunt Qin's expression changed greatly. She waved her hand and dismissed the disciple. Then she said nervously, Sect Leader Zhang, bad news! Ding Chao and Du Feng are missing. Ah? Everyone was shocked. Zhang Xiaohu asked nervously. What happened? Reporting to sect leader, according to this disciple, I saw two vice hall masters personally standing guard around the villa, but when I asked them to come to the meeting hall, they were nowhere to be seen. I don't know where they went. Sect leader, could it be those two brats from the incense teaching school who did it? Lu Qingyang shouted. Impossible! Zhang Xiaohu denied. But where could they have gone? Li Jian also frowned. Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. Before he could speak, he heard a rush of light footsteps outside the meeting hall. Zhang Xiaohu's lips curled into a smile. Du Feng and Ding Chao used their qigong to leap into the meeting hall. Seeing everyone in the hall, the two of them looked back with lingering fear, as if something unbelievable had just happened. Ahem, Ding Chao, Du Feng, where did you go? Zhang Xiaohu saw that the two of them looked as if they had seen a ghost, and became even more determined. He held back the laughter in his heart, and asked, This? Du Feng and Ding Chao looked at each other, and didn't know what to say. Lu Qingyang scolded. Sect Leader Zhang is asking you something. How can you be negligent? Could it be that Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng did something to you? Shui Qing asked. Well, Ding Chao thought for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, Faction Leader Zhang, Masters, please forgive me for being unfilial. I've already promised others that I won't tell them the whole story. Please don't force me. You. When Lu Qingyang heard this, he almost wanted to use his alms bowl-sized fist to beat him up. It was fine if he didn't want to tell them, but he had succeeded in provoking others' curiosity. This wasn't killing the cat, it was killing people. When everyone looked at Dufeng again, the expression on Dufeng's face relaxed a little. What about you, Dufeng? You can't tell your masters either, right? Lu Wenming asked with a smile. Dufeng waved his hand. No, there's nothing I can't say. That senior didn't say anything to me before. It's just that I didn't see the senior's face these 2 times. I don't even know if it's a man or a woman. It's a man. I can tell from his voice, Ding Chao added. Dufeng glared at Ding Chao and said, What I mean is that I didn't see his face at all. Hee. Ding Chao smiled and didn't say anything. Then what exactly happened? Dufeng, tell us, Zhang Xiaohu asked, even though he already knew the answer. Sure enough, Dufeng thought for a moment and told them what happened on Shixin Peak. Before he finished, Li Jian and Wen Wenhai were shocked. They looked at Zhang Xiaohu and wanted to ask. Zhang Xiaohu was surprised and asked curiously, You said, after you took that elixir, there was a heat flow in your meridians? Then, after refining that heat flow, my inner strength improved greatly? Yes? Could it be that sect leader Zhang has taken it before? Dufeng asked curiously. I haven't taken it before, but I've heard of it. Zhang Xiaohu looked at Li Jian and said, Go on. Yes, sect leader Zhang. Dufeng cleared his throat and said, Just now, Ding Chao and I were guarding outside the villa. We were afraid that the disciples of the incense cult would go out to spread the news. But as we were walking, we suddenly felt a pain in our back and everything went black. When we woke up, we were in the bushes beside the road. I used my qi and found that my acupoints were sealed. There was a short black shadow in front of me, hiding his body in a cloak. Ah? He captured both of you at once? Li Jian felt that it was a bit unbelievable. Yes, Ancestor Li, that's exactly what happened, Ding Chao added. What did that person do to you? Wen Wenhai asked. That person didn't do anything. He just told us that he was a person who had a deep relationship with the Misty School. He was the one who gave us the elixir on Shixin Peak and helped us improve our skills. How is that possible? How could he go to Shixin Peak? Lu Qingyang's face was full of disbelief. But I had Qigong deviation on Shixin Peak. There was no one around, and this senior clearly described the situation at that time. I can't help but believe it. Dufeng looked at Ding Chao and said, And looking at senior brother Ding, what the senior said about him must be true. Ding Chao blushed and said, That's right. That matter only in junior sister, you know. There is no fourth person who knows. I can confirm that it was that senior. That's right. Because it was at Shixin Peak, Disciple had thought that it was an elder of Fragrant Cult. Disciple was conflicted. Now that I've heard that this senior has a deep relationship with our Misty sect and is not from Fragrant Cult, Disciple's heart is at ease. Dufeng seemed to be relieved. Me too. I finally figured out that my martial arts have nothing to do with the incense cult. Ding Chao also laughed. Then, why do you look like that? Like you saw a ghost? Reporting to Ancestrally, because after that senior left, I found that the place where I was very far from the Misty Mountain Villa. It was absolutely impossible for me to get there in a short time. This subordinate waited for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. But when I asked the disciple on duty, this subordinate also left for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. So, faction leader Zhang, what do you think? Lu Wenming asked softly. Haha, I can't say much because I also promised this senior that I would never tell anyone, Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Ah? Li Jian and the others exclaimed and stood up. Could it be, we are all the benefactors of this senior? Yes, I was also hesitant before, but after listening to Ding Chao and Du Feng, I can confirm that it is this senior. Zhang Xiaohu emphasized this senior, but he was laughing in his heart. Finally, the matter of the elixir and Zhang Xiaohua was perfectly covered up. Presumably, all the things in the future could be pushed to Zhang Xiaohua, this so-called senior. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11:10. After listening to Zhang Xiaohu's explanation, Li Jian, Wen Wenhai and the others suddenly understood. To be honest, they had been muttering in their hearts. To be able to restore the martial arts of thousands of Misty School disciples who had been crippled, this was definitely not a simple matter. In the Jianghu, it was simply a miracle. Although they trusted Zhang Xiaohu, they were always worried about Zhang Xiaohu's methods. Yes, with Zhang Xiaohu's methods, it was absolutely impossible for him to have such an ability. As for Zhang Xiaohu said, did he get the magical elixir from the Twilight Orchid refinement? Please, they were all people who had been in the Jianghu and had also been through the extermination of a sect. How could they be deceived by such a simple reason? However, the restoration of martial arts was obvious to all, and it was also true that they had taken down the Misty Heights. If not, they would almost believe that Zhang Xiaohu was a spy specially cultivated by Nun Jingyi. However, just for a spy, to restore the martial arts of all the Misty School disciples? This was too much of a price. And, with Du Feng and Ding Chao, these two unrelated examples, Zhang Xiaohu's explanation seemed to be very easy to accept. Therefore, Li Jian said again, "Then, who is this person? Who can have such a magical elixir and follow me to Shixin Peak? Someone who has a great relationship with the Misty School. Thinking about it, there can only be one person." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohu was shocked and whispered, "This senior has already said that we can't leak it out. It's better for us not to make wild guesses." Li Jian frowned. "Senior naturally has his reasons for saying this, but we are indebted to him, so we can't not know. I thought for a long time, and only the one in Huanxi Villa has a slight possibility." With a thump, Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. He looked a little flustered and said, "Ancestor Li, we still have guests here, let's talk to them first." However, Li Jian acted as if he didn't hear him. After muttering for a while, he asked again, "Faction leader Zhang, don't you think that senior is missing an arm?" Sigh. Zhang Xiaohu finally heaved a sigh of relief and shook his head slightly. "I've never seen that senior's full appearance, and I don't even know if he's missing an arm." "I don't think so." Du Feng shook his head and said, "That senior seemed to use both of his hands when he healed me. And just now in the cloak, it didn't seem like—" "Oh right, Grandmaster Li, if it was only one arm, how could you take me and senior brother Ding away together?" "That's true." Li Jian nodded. Zhang Xiaohu couldn't let Li Jian guess blindly, so he hurriedly said to Chu Yunfei, "Brother Chu, did Elder Hu say when he will return to Misty Heights?" Hearing this, Chu Yunfei cupped his hands and said, "Reporting to faction leader Zhang, Elder Hu knew that the Misty School was restored, so he was very happy and had been looking forward to coming back. But he also knew that there must be something wrong, so he sent his disciples to take a look. If the Misty School was controlled by my Misty School's disciples, even if there were disciples of the incense cult, Elder Hu would still come back to help faction leader Zhang." "Haha, that's great!" Zhang Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Brother Chu must have seen that my Misty School has many things waiting to be done. We just need Elder Hu and the other elders of the Misty School to come back and revitalize my Misty School together." Li Jian thought for a while, but he had no clue. He had to pull his thoughts back and nodded. "That's right. Now the Misty School is the Misty School of the Misty Heights. We are all hiding our strength. If Boss Hu comes back, the strength of our Misty School will increase greatly. Who will worry about the disciples of the incense cult? Well, Grandmaster Li, don't worry about this. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng will not do anything harmful to our Misty School in the future. And with their support, I think those disciples of the incense cult will be honest and obedient. That's good. I forgot about this. Li Jian smiled. Well, Du Feng, you accompany Brother Chu and let him see the current misty heights, so that he can go back and report to Elder Hu. Tomorrow at noon, you all come to the conference hall. I have something important to announce. Yes, Grand Faction Master. Not only did Du Feng stand up, Li Jian and the others also stood up. Oh, right. Grand Faction Master Zhang, I have a private matter that I want to ask you. Chu Yunfei saw that Zhang Xiaohu was about to leave, so he quickly said, So it's like this. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Then I'll have to ask the elders to leave for a while? Li Jian smiled and left first. After everyone left, Chu Yunfei said embarrassedly, Grand Faction Master Zhang, do you have a younger brother named Zhang Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Haha, of course. Zhang Xiaohua is my younger brother. Then, without waiting for Chu Yunfei to say anything, Zhang Xiaohu said again, Xiaohua has already told me that he met you in Songning Town. Haha, that's good. I've been wondering that I didn't meet a disciple of our Misty School. Since he's your younger brother, I should thank him even more. I wonder, where is Zhang Xiaohua? Well, Zhang Xiaohu hesitated and said, Xiaohua is in Huanqi Villa, but I don't know if he's there now. Well, I'll go back and have a look. If he's there, I'll tell him what you mean, okay? That's good. Chu Yunfei said gratefully. Your younger brother is not only good at martial arts, but also very close to your brother. He knew that Grand Faction Master Zhang might have gone to the incense cult, so he insisted on going with you. But I don't know where the incense cult is, and Elder Hu doesn't know either, so... Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Brother Chu, you're right. But the incense cult is a long journey. My younger brother is still young. Even if he wants to go, he doesn't have enough strength. Later, when he got your message, he gave up looking for me. I just went back to the Misty Peak recently and brought my family here. My younger brother naturally came with me. Well, I hope Grand Faction Master Zhang can tell him what I mean. I also hope to thank him in person for saving my life. Okay, I'll tell him. But I don't know if he's at home. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. After Chu Yunfei left, Zhang Xiaohu also went back to the Huanqi Villa. Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohua was not in the small courtyard at all. She must have gone to the alchemy room of the Misty Palace to refine pills. Thinking of what Zhang Xiaohua had done for the Misty School, Zhang Xiaohu was a little embarrassed. It seemed that she had done more than him. The title of Grand Faction Master of the Misty School should be Zhang Xiaohua. She's the founder of the Beidou School. Why would she care about the Grand Faction Master of the Misty School? Zhang Xiaohu could not help but smile bitterly. Everyone's pursuit was really different. In the alchemy room, 7 alchemy furnaces were melting together. Zhang Xiaohua was sitting cross-legged. She sneezed several times in a row, which made him wonder. Although the weather is starting to get cold, it shouldn't be so bad. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohu did not go to the conference hall. Instead, he went straight to the back mountain of the Misty School. He stayed in the place where the disciples of the Righteous Alliance were imprisoned for a long time. He did not leave until it was almost noon. Du Feng had received Zhang Xiaohu's order. He accompanied Chu Yunfei the whole morning to see all the places of the Misty Mountain Villa. The more Chu Yunfei looked, the more excited he was. The Misty Mountain Villa was the place where he grew up. How could he not have feelings for it? Now that he saw that the Misty Mountain Villa was no different from before. His amiable fellow apprentices were diligently practicing martial arts. This had long evoked his homesickness. When he returned to the conference hall, before Zhang Xiaohu could say anything, Chu Yunfei bowed and said, Reporting to Grand Faction Master Zhang, this disciple has been accompanied by Vice Hall Leader Du. It seems that the Misty Mountain Villa is quite different from what this disciple had imagined. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile, Brother Chu, what did you think before? Chu Yunfei hesitated for a moment and said without any trace of politeness, This disciple thought that Grand Faction Master Zhang was just a figurehead. The people who could speak were the disciples of the fragrance cult. And Elder Lu, even Martial Uncle Wen and Martial Uncle Lu did not come back with Grand Faction Master Zhang. They were left in the fragrance cult as hostages. Ha! Zhang Xiaohu laughed and said, Brother Chu, you are very imaginative. But what you said is probably what everyone in Jianghu thinks. There is nothing strange about it. Grand Faction Master Zhang is right. Elder Hu told this disciple to observe carefully and carefully. But when I saw Elderly yesterday, I was already relieved. This Misty School is still our Misty School. Nothing has changed. Good. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, I am also very much looking forward to Elder Hu's return. Only when Elder Hu and the others come back can our Misty School really be restored to its former Misty School. Yes, this is also what this disciple hopes for, Chu Yunfei said with a smile. So this disciple will not stay here any longer. I will hurry back and report this matter to Elder Hu. If there is no accident, there should be a reply in 10 days. So fast? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and then said with a smile, Look, Elder Hu has also been paying attention to Ethereal Heights for a long time. Yes, as early as the news that the Misty School's disciples returned to Ethereal Heights came, Elder Hu began to prepare. Now that the news is correct, of course, he will come back as soon as possible. That's good. Then I will have to trouble Brother Chu. I will be waiting for Elder Hu and the other brothers in Ethereal Heights. I don't dare. Grand Faction Master Zhang, please call me Chu Yunfei. Chu Yunfei thought for a moment and asked, About what I said yesterday. Haha, Brother Chu, unfortunately, my brother was not at home last night. My family doesn't know where he went. I am afraid that you can't see him now. Brother Chu will return to Ethereal Heights in a few days. Won't there be many opportunities to meet? Chu Yunfei was a little disappointed, but he still cupped his hands and said, Grand Faction Master Zhang is right. I will leave now. See you in a few days. My Misty School has a very important meeting in the afternoon. Brother Chu, don't you want to listen to it? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and asked him to stay. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11:11. No, I don't have the qualifications to participate in the meeting, so I won't take part in this. I still want to report the situation here to Elder Hu so that I can return to Ethereal Mountain Villa as soon as possible. Chu Yunfei didn't hide his eagerness to return. All right, since Brother Chu says so, I won't keep you. Please. Zhang Xiaohu stood up to see him out. Chu Yunfei didn't dare to let the Misty School's faction master see him out. He quickly bowed and said, I'll take my leave. Please stay, faction master. Good. Du Feng, help me see Chu Yunfei out. Then inform Elder Lu, and Elder Wen. Yes, I'll follow your orders. Du Feng replied and then sent Chu Yun out. Ding Chao, go to the pharmacy hall and invite Vice Faction Master Ming Qing and Vice Faction Master Gao Kunheng here for a meeting. Then go to the back of Ethereal Mountain and bring the people from the Alliance of Righteous Sects here. Ding Chao was confused, but he still nodded and left. Hall Master Qin, please call the disciples from Fledgling Hall, Mingsui Hall, Divine Machine Hall, and Law Enforcement Hall who were qualified to come to the meeting hall. Ask them to come to the meeting hall as well. Yes, as you command, Grand Faction Master. Madame Qin replied. However, she turned around halfway and said, Faction Master Zhang, you're making such a big fuss. Are you going to break off relations with the incense cult? We don't have the strength to do that yet. Faction Master Zhang, please reconsider. Thank you for your advice, Hall Master Qin. I know what to do. You can go now, Zhang Xiaohua said nonchalantly. Sigh. Madame Qin could only sigh and walk out of the meeting hall. In the time it took to eat a meal, everyone had arrived. The meeting hall was filled with people. However, it was the first time that most of the disciples had entered the meeting hall after the calamity. The leader of this meeting hall had also changed. Hence, they did not dare to speak and just stood there quietly. The last ones to enter were Li Jian and Lu Qingyang. The two of them immediately saw Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng sitting on the chairs to the right of Zhang Xiaohu. Lu Qingyang's expression changed and he hurriedly looked around for a reclining chair. However, he didn't expect the two of them to come. He didn't make any preparations at all. Where could he find one now? Seeing Lu Qingyang's appearance, the corners of Zhang Xiaohu's mouth curled into a smile. He beckoned Lu Qingyang over. Lu Qingyang looked at Li Jian, then glared at Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng. He went straight to Zhang Xiaohu and asked in a low voice, "Grand Gang Leader Zhang, why did you ask me to come here?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "Because I want to tell you that from today onwards, Elder Lu, you don't have to pretend that your injuries haven't healed." Ah? Next to him, Li Jian was stunned. He looked at Lu Qingyang with a strange expression. He didn't know what Zhang Xiaohu was trying to sell. "Elders, please take a seat. Listen to me." "Yes, as you command, Grand Gang Leader." Li Jian and Lu Qingyang sat on the chairs to the left of Zhang Xiaohu. "Hey, who are those two people?" Lu Qingyang looked at the two people next to Ming Qing and was stunned. "Sure, don't ask first." "I don't know either. Let's wait for Grand Gang Leader Zhang to introduce them." "All right, everyone." Seeing that everyone was here, Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, "After my Misty School conquered ethereal heights, I often come to this conference hall. I've also dealt with a lot of the sex affairs. However, this conference hall has never been as lively as it is today. I've also never been as happy as I am today. Because from today onwards, this conference hall will be the real place for my Misty School to discuss matters. My Misty School's disciples' words will have real weight here." Li Jian, Wen Weihai, and the others listened and frowned. However, looking at Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng's reactions, they were even more puzzled. Not only did the two not lower their heads, but they also raised their heads slightly. They narrowed their eyes and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. When they heard something, they even nodded slightly. It seemed that they were the same as Wen Weihai, Misty School's direct disciples. "This is really strange." Wen Weihai and Lu Wenming exchanged glances. They were both extremely puzzled. In the conference hall, Zhang Xiaohu's voice was still echoing. "I'm indebted to all the Misty School's elders and teachers for not abandoning me and pushing me to be the Grand Gang Leader of the Misty School. I'm also indebted to all the Misty School's martial uncles, senior brothers, and senior sisters of the Misty School to listen to my orders. I'll definitely not disappoint everyone. I'll work hard and do my best to run our Misty School well. I'll let all the seniors of the Misty School in the Netherworld rest in peace." "Well said, Grand Gang Leader Zhang." Ming Qing was the first to applaud. Everyone was stunned and thought to themselves, "What does this have to do with you?" But their hands were also clapping with all their might. After everyone's applause died down, Zhang Xiaohu continued, "Also, I have a few other happy events to announce. First, the Misty School branch brothers that Elder who took away will be able to return to ethereal heights in 10 days. My Misty School brothers will be able to reunite, and my Misty School's strength will be able to rise to another level." Great! Everyone was happy to hear that. Zhang Xiaohu gestured with his hands and continued, "The second happy event is that the disciples of the Righteous Alliance will be officially integrated into my Misty School from today onwards." As he spoke, he waved his hand. The two people beside Ming Qing stood up and bowed to everyone. "I'm Wang Luan and Lu Bin. Greetings to everyone." "Ah?" Only then did everyone understand that the people sitting beside Ming Qing were actually the captured disciples of the Righteous Alliance. After the battle at Ethereal Peak, everyone already knew the strength of the disciples of the Righteous Alliance. They were not much inferior to the disciples of Misty School. On that day, because Zhang Xiaohua had killed the Righteous Alliance's class leader Fugui and the 4 great reverends, the disciples of the Righteous Alliance were scared silly. Hence, thousands of elites had put down their weapons without fighting. These elite disciples were sent by the Righteous Alliance to guard Ethereal Peak. They were the elites of the Righteous Alliance. With the addition of these captured disciples, it would definitely make the Misty School even more powerful. After Wang Luan and Lu Bin bowed, they sat down. They did not mind the coldness of the people of Misty School. When the two of them sat down, the disciples of Misty School came to their senses. They clapped and cheered. Then Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Third, naturally, the disciples of the incense cult will be integrated into my Misty School. It doesn't matter if this is a cliché or an old bottle of wine. In short, from now on, these disciples will be my Misty School's disciples." Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng stood up and bowed to everyone. "I'm Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng. Greetings to everyone." Everyone present did not understand the situation. They could understand the disciples of the Righteous Alliance surrendering, but what about the incense cult? Were they originally Misty School's disciples? Why did they emphasize it again? The disciples of Misty School had a natural resistance to the disciples of the incense cult. Not to mention cheering, they did not even applaud. Zhang Xiaohu frowned and said, "I naturally know about the past. However, from now on, the disciples led by Deputy Leader Ming and Deputy Leader Gao are real disciples of my Misty School. They are no longer disciples of the incense cult. Do you all understand?" Hearing this, Li Jian immediately clapped and said with a smile, "Leader Zhang is a man of great talent. He actually brought the original disciples of the incense cult and the Righteous Alliance into my Misty School. This is really a great event for my Misty School." Good, everyone heard this and quickly clapped. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "From now on, there are no more disciples of the incense cult or the Righteous Alliance in Ethereal Heights. They are all disciples of my Misty School. If there is any filthy matter, or if you mention the past, I will not tolerate it. I will punish all of you severely. Yes, we will follow leader's orders," everyone said in unison. "Well, then I have finished talking about the good news. Next, I will announce a few more tasks." Zhang Xiaohua looked around at everyone and said with a smile, "The first thing is that my Ethereal Heights has so many new disciples. In the future, there will be disciples brought by Elder Hu. Our Ethereal Heights does not have enough rooms. The original disciples of the incense cult can't always occupy the pharmacy hall. Therefore, I need to find someone who can build a house and build a house for my Ethereal Heights." Boom! Everyone laughed. This laughter was not ridicule, but laughter from the bottom of their hearts. Li Jian also could not hide his smile and said loudly, "Leader Zhang, this kind of thing is done by the Divine Engineering Hall. The Divine Engineering Hall has a disciple in charge of this kind of thing." Then he turned his head and said, "Which disciple is it? Hurry up and explain to Leader Zhang." Before he finished speaking, a short, fat, and honest disciple came out from behind and bowed. "Disciple Lu Wanquan greets Leader Zhang. Disciple is in charge of this kind of thing in the Divine Engineering Hall." "Good." Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, "Please wait a moment." Then he raised his head and said, "Which disciple is in charge of external affairs like the Lotus Escort Agency?" A disciple who looked a little shrewd came out from the crowd and bowed. "Disciple Wan Feng is in charge of this kind of thing in the Divine Engineering Hall." "Well, good." Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said loudly, "I plan to take out external affairs and internal affairs from the Divine Engineering Hall and set up another external affairs hall to be in charge of these two kinds of things. Lu Wanquan and Wan Feng will be the deputy hall masters." What does everyone think? Lu Wanquan and Wan Feng were pleasantly surprised. Then they looked around nervously, afraid that someone would object. Seeing this, Li Jian said, "Leader Zhang, Lu Wanquan and Wan Feng will be the deputy hall masters." "Then, who will be the hall master?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "I haven't thought it through yet. If Elder Li has someone to recommend, that would be the best." Li Jian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is the authority of the leader. It's better if I don't say too much. Hee, that's good too. Then we'll wait for Elder Hu to come back and let him recommend someone," Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. "Eh?" Li Jian was stunned. Then he understood and nodded slightly. Seeing Li Jian nod, Zhang Xiaohu also smiled and nodded. "Well, since no one objects, I will appoint Lu Wanquan and Wan Feng as the deputy hall masters of the Misty School's External Affairs Hall. Then he said to Lu Wanquan, Hall Master Lu Fu, you have to lead the disciples under you and build the house as well. Otherwise, everyone will make things difficult for you. Please rest assured, Leader Zhang. This disciple, this subordinate will definitely not disappoint Leader Zhang and let our Misty School's disciples live in the best houses. Lu Wanquan was almost moved to tears. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip, thank you. To be continued. -4. Chapter 11-12. That's great! Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, Everyone will do their best for our Misty School. Vice Leader Lu, please don't disappoint us. Then he turned to Wan Feng and said, Lotus Flower Escort Agency and the other Misty School's external forces also need to be integrated. Otherwise, our Misty School's disciples won't have any extra food at home. We can't possibly practice martial arts on an empty stomach, right? Vice Leader Wan's responsibility is also very heavy. If you have any needs, feel free to ask me. I will do my best to cooperate with you. Wan Feng didn't expect Zhang Xiaohu to place such importance on him. He was grateful and said, Your subordinate's life belongs to Grand Faction Leader. Since Grand Faction Leader is so fond of me, your subordinate will do his best to let our Misty School's disciples have nothing to worry about. Haha, very good. Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and asked Lu Wanquan and Wan Feng to sit down. Then he smiled and said, Now that our Misty School's disciples have increased greatly, the original halls can no longer accommodate so many disciples. Moreover, it's inconvenient to manage them. Therefore, I suggest that we set up a martial arts lecture hall and a martial arts discussion hall. Thousands of disciples from the original incense cult will be managed in these two halls. The two vice leaders, Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng, will be the hall masters of these two halls. What do you think? For a moment, the meeting hall was silent. The disciples of the Misty School didn't speak. After a while, Li Jian smiled and said, Grand Faction Leader Zheng's suggestion is very appropriate. The original incense cult disciples are not our Misty School disciples. It's inevitable that there will be conflicts if we manage them together. If we can set up one hall, we can take advantage of the situation and develop harmoniously. This old man agrees. Everyone understood Li Jian's words. The disciples of the incense cult were very powerful. If they didn't manage them individually, it was hard to guarantee that something like Wang Dong wouldn't happen again. Letting Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng manage them was a good idea. Besides, the disciples of the incense cult only listened to Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng. Zhang Xiaohu's suggestion was reasonable, but could Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng do it? However, when Li Jian finished speaking, Zhang Xiaohu raised his hand and said, Vice Gang Leader Ming, Vice Gang Leader Gao, what do you think? Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng's words made all the Misty School disciples' jaws drop to the ground. Yes, Gang Leader. We will remember Gang Leader's teachings. We will do our best for the Misty School until the day we die. Seeing everyone's shocked faces, Zhang Xiaohu smiled faintly. I know that you guys are handsome for a while in the fragrant cult, but the fragrant cult is all about women. My Misty School is different. If you guys contribute to my Misty School will definitely not mistreat you. We understand. We will not let you down. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng stood up and cupped their hands in salute. Oh, so that's how it is. Li Jian and the others suddenly understood. No matter how outstanding Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng were, there was no way they could stand out in the fragrant cult. However, the Misty School was also an inheritance of the way of the Immortals. It would definitely be very attractive to them. You guys sit down. Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, Next, I'm sure everyone knows that I will put the original disciples of the Righteous Alliance into two halls. These two halls will be called the Jinwu Hall and the Hanwu Hall. The original disciples of the Righteous Alliance, Wang Lun and Lu Bin, will be the respective hall masters. What do you guys think? The disciples of the Righteous Alliance were different from the disciples of the Fragrant Cult. Although these disciples were strong in battle and would be a great help to the Misty School, they were still disciples of the Righteous Alliance. Not to mention whether they were willing or not, even the leader of the Righteous Alliance, Zhang San, might not be able to do the same. This is a hot potato! Everyone had the same thought. Sect leader Zhang, this matter. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Can you reconsider? Lu Wenming stood up and said. I've thought about what Master Lu said. I have my own way of dealing with it. Please don't worry, Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Then, all right. The disciples of the Righteous Alliance are all capable. If they really become disciples of the Misty School, I'll be happy. Lu Wenming sat down helplessly. Do you guys have any objections? Zhang Xiaohu asked Wang Lun and Lu Bin as usual. How could the two of them have any objections? They bowed and said, The ethereal sect is the orthodox sect of the Immortal Tao. We were fortunate that sect Master Zhang didn't abandon us and accepted us into the ethereal sect. This is what we have been longing for many years. Now that sect Master Zhang has passed it on to everyone, we can only thank sect Master Zhang for entrusting us with this task. We will do our best to manage our disciples well. Very good. Zhang Xiaohu gestured for the two to sit down and said, The new 4 halls are named after martial arts. They will be the sharpest martial arts of the Misty School. I hope that the disciples of the 4 halls will work hard and make the name of the Misty School known in the martial arts world. We will not disappoint sect leader Zhang. The 2 deputy leaders and 2 hall leaders stood up together. The disciples of the Misty School were enlightened. Just like Ming Jing, they knew why Zhang Xiaohu made such arrangements. They had already given Zhang Xiaohu countless thumbs up in their hearts. The former disciples of the incense cult and the Righteous Alliance who had nothing to do with them, using them as fighters. To think that sect leader Zhang could think of such a thing. To think that the 4 deputy leaders and hall leaders would agree to it. But was that the truth? Ha ha! Zhang Xiaohu laughed and clapped his hands. Today will be a milestone in the history of the Misty School. Everyone will be proud of this moment after witnessing it. Sect leader Zhang is wise. The disciples of the Misty School were in an uproar. If the disciples of the Martial Arts Lecture Hall, Martial Arts Symposium Hall, Martial Arts Hall, and Martial Arts Hall were included, the strength of the Misty School was already stronger than the Misty School under Openg. How could they not be happy? After the commotion died down, Zhang Xiaohua stood up again and said, Everyone please calm down. I have not finished speaking. There's more? The crowd immediately quieted down. Zhang Xiaohu narrowed his eyes and looked around at the crowd. The Law Enforcement Hall is the hall in the Misty School that enforces the sect's rules. It is extremely important. Not only does it have to quote the classics, it also has to be fair in its rewards and punishments. Dufeng, as the deputy hall leader of the Law Enforcement Hall, is not enough to deter the entire Misty School. Therefore, I nominate Marshal Uncle Lu Wenming, who has always hated evil, to be the deputy leader of the Misty School and also the head of the Law Enforcement Hall. What do you think? Everyone clapped and nodded. Lu Wenming was Peng's direct disciple and had a great reputation in the sect. Back then, he was second only to Zhang Qingwei. Of course, he would be the deputy leader of the Misty School. However, while Aunt Qin and the others were happy, they couldn't help but worry. They looked hesitant and didn't know if they should voice their thoughts. Zhang Xiaohu knew what Aunt Qin was thinking. He waved his hand and said, Hall Leader Qin, do you have something you want to say? This is the meeting hall of the Misty School. It is the place to discuss sect matters. I am still young and inexperienced. If Hall Leader Qin has any advice that can help me make up for my shortcomings, I will be happy. Aunt Qin hesitated. She looked at Lu Wenming and said embarrassedly, This subordinate does have some thoughts. Of course, Lu. Deputy Leader Lu's abilities are outstanding. This heavy responsibility should be used to the best of one's ability. This subordinate has no intention of objecting. However, Deputy Leader Lu's martial arts are inferior. If he is taken advantage of by outsiders, Wouldn't Big Leader Zhang harm Deputy Leader Lu? He he. Lu Yuanming looked at Zhang Xiaohu when he heard this. Zhang Xiaohu nodded slightly. Lu Yuanming threw away the crutch in his hand. His body floated up and made a turn in the air. Then, he circled around and slowly climbed up. When he reached the roof of the assembly hall, he slid a few feet to the side. Then, like an eagle, he flew down. Ah! Ethereal steps! Aunt Qin was dumbfounded. She covered her mouth with her hand and exclaimed. Deputy Leader Lu recovered his internal strength. He he. Lu Yuanming smiled but didn't answer. After a while, Aunt Qin's face was filled with joy. She cupped her hands and said, Big Leader Zhang, this subordinate has no other questions. Very good. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, Actually, with Hall Leader Qin's experience and ability, you can also be the deputy leader. However, Aunt Qin was shocked. She quickly stood up and bowed. Big Leader Zhang, this subordinate is too much. This subordinate is just a woman. In order to accompany Hall Master Yang on Shixing Peak, I had no choice but to become the deputy Hall Master of the Misty Hall. Big Sect Master must also know about the tradition of the incense cult, so this subordinate had to bite the bullet. Now that I'm back at Misty School, although this subordinate is still the hall leader of Mingsui Hall, this subordinate feels at ease and feels very good. If this subordinate really becomes the deputy leader, this subordinate still feels very uncomfortable. Ha! The older disciples of Misty School all laughed. Aunt Qin was right. She was indeed nothing in Misty School. The reason why she was made the hall leader of Mingsui Hall was mainly because she was a woman. It was more convenient for her to manage Mingsui Hall. If she was really given the deputy leader position, Zhang Xiaohu dared to give it to her, but she really didn't dare to take it. Ha! Zhang Xiaohu gestured for her to sit down. Rest assured, Hall Leader Qin. In the future, there will be plenty of positions in Misty School. You can take your time and see. The disciples of Misty School felt a chill in their hearts, but they quickly became happy. They had received Zhang Xiaohu's grace and secretly placed Zhang Xiaohu in a very high position in their hearts. Now that they saw that Zhang Xiaohu wanted to make Misty School bigger, they had to support him unconditionally, both publicly and privately. All right, Deputy Leader Lu, you don't have any objections, right? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Lu Yuanming with a smile. Lu Yuanming hadn't sat down. When he heard this, he bowed and saluted. As Big Leader Zhang commands. This subordinate will do his best to assist Big Leader Zhang. Deputy Leader Lu, please take a seat. After Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, she looked at Xue Qing and said, Marshal Uncle Xue, Kitty Hawk Hall is the foundation of our Misty School. All the young disciples have to be nurtured there. It is of utmost importance. Would you like to be the hall leader of Kitty Hawk Hall? This? Xue Qing was a little hesitant. He glanced at Wen Wahai. Wen Wahai nodded slightly. Thus, Xue Qing said softly, This subordinate doesn't like trivial matters. But if Big Leader Zhang doesn't have a suitable candidate, this subordinate is willing to take on this heavy responsibility. Good. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Marshal Uncle Xue, if you take on the role of Kitty Hawk Hall leader, you can choose the former elite disciples of Kitty Hawk Hall and recommend them to me. I will appoint them as deputy hall leaders of Kitty Hawk Hall. Also, please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect it, please tip it. Thank you. If you like this work, you are welcome to cast a recommendation vote or monthly vote at Chidian. Com. -4. Chapter 11-13. When Xue Qing's ears perked up to hear Zhang Xiaohu say, and something, Zhang Xiaohu stopped abruptly and waved his hand. Since Hall Master Xue has no objections, please take a seat. From today onwards, you will be in charge of Kitty Hawk Hall's affairs. Quickly rebuild Kitty Hawk Hall. The inheritance of Misty School's orthodoxy will fall on their heads. Orthodoxy? Inheritance? Others might not have felt anything when they heard it, but Li Jian was stunned. Zhang Xiaohu was only Wen Wenhai's disciple, and his master was martial arts. Moreover, Wen Wahai himself was not the chief disciple of Misty's school. He only knew that Misty's school was an immortal inheritance, but he was completely clueless as to how it was passed down. Peng and Zhang Qinghua died in a hurry and did not leave anything behind. Misty's school's martial arts continued, but immortality, fundamentally speaking, it was already broken. Maybe he just said it casually. Li Jian could only think of it this way. After all, even he, Peng's second senior, did not know what the immortal inheritance of Misty's school was, so how could Zhang Xiaohu, a disciple who joined Misty's school halfway, know? But suddenly, Li Jian shuddered as he thought of the senior who Zhang Xiaohu, Du Feng, and Ding Chao had mentioned that had a deep relationship with Misty's school. Could it be? But just as this thought arose, he extinguished it. Sigh, am I getting old and muddle-headed? Am I thinking too much in my hopes of Misty's school's rise? Misty's school's immortal path has not been passed down for who knows how many years. Even Peng did not get it, so how could an outsider know? Also, Zhang Xiaohu did not even see his face. Sigh. Li Jian sighed for no reason. Who knew what he was sighing about? Then, Zhang Xiaohu's gaze turned to Wen Wahai. This was his master who had taught him martial arts. Why did his martial uncles all have positions while his master had no position? Wen Wahai also secretly took a deep breath. As expected, Zhang Xiaohu said in a deep voice, Master, the Divine Mechanics Hall is the most important hall of our Misty school. I don't feel comfortable leaving it to others. Master, you're a person of virtue and prestige. How about I leave the Divine Mechanics Hall to you? Wen Wahai was a little disappointed. He wanted to nod, but Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Of course, the position of Hall Master of the Divine Arms Hall is also yours, Master. You shouldn't shirk the responsibility of being the vice-sect leader of the Misty School. Wen Wahai was overjoyed, but he said, You little brat. Although Master is old, I'm not much older than you. How can I casually call you senior? Hee, Master, don't blame me. Zhang Xiaohu said. This is an honorific. Forget it, I won't bicker with you. Now that you're the great sect leader of the Misty School, how can I not listen to your orders? Thank you, Master. Zhang Xiaohu said seriously. Then I'll have to trouble Master to worry about me from now on. I'll obey great sect leader's orders. Wen Wahai also said seriously. Please take a seat, Vice Sect Leader 1. Zhang Xiaohu looked around and said, Is Hall Master Bai Dong of the Pharmacy Hall present? An old man with white hair and a white beard, but an extremely hale and hearty expression, stood up from his seat and bowed. Your subordinate is here. Hall Master Bai, the Pharmacy Hall needs to be rebuilt. Naturally, the position of Hall Master is yours, so I won't assign anyone else. I just want to recommend He Tianshu of the Pharmacy Hall to be the Vice Hall Master. Is that possible? Bai Dong was the Hall Master of the Pharmacy Hall. His martial arts weren't particularly high, so he wasn't killed by the Righteous Alliance during the battle at the Misty Peak. His Dantian was only destroyed and he was spared. Now that his martial arts had recovered and the Pharmacy Hall was rebuilt, Bai Dong naturally needed to be the Hall Master. When he heard that Zhang Xiaohu was only recommending a Vice Hall Master and a disciple of the Pharmacy Hall, how could he refuse? He cupped his hands and said, This subordinate is old and weak, but the Pharmacy Hall is my heart and blood, so I can't bear to give it up. He Tianshu recommended by great sect leader is in his prime and full of energy. He can learn from me and make up for my shortcomings. This subordinate will do my best to rebuild the Pharmacy Hall and cultivate Vice Hall Master he well. I won't let great sect leader down. Very good. Zhang Xiaohu invited Hall Master Bai to sit down and said to Li Jian, Martial Ancestrally, I also want to build another Elder's Courtyard. I invite Martial Ancestrally, Martial Ancestrally, Martial Ancestrally, Martial Ancestrally, and other highly respected elders to contribute to the Elder's Courtyard. Li Jian stood up and said with a smile, That's good. Old steeds still have ambitions. To be able to enter the Elder's Courtyard is my wish and also my honor. How dare I refuse? I'm in, I'm in! Lu Qingyang also stood up and shouted. Ha! Zhang Xiuhu looked up to the sky and laughed. Everyone, the 11 halls of the Misty Peak have been decided. I'm sure everyone has found their positions. I hope that everyone can work together and build the Misty School's supreme glory. Mighty! It seemed that from that day onwards, the disciples of the Misty School liked to shout like this. Today, it happened again. The disciples outside the conference hall didn't understand. But when they heard the shouts in the conference hall, they knew that there was a new happy occasion. They stood outside and shouted as well. When the messenger disciple passed the news out of the conference hall, the disciples of the Misty School were even more delighted. After mighty, they naturally added, Great sect leader Zhang. For a moment, Great sect leader Zhang is mighty, resounded throughout the Misty Peak. Even Zhang Kai and Guosufei in the Huanxi villa heard it, and couldn't close their mouths for a moment. Only Zhang Xiaolong heard it, and shrugged his shoulders. His face was filled with loneliness. Lu Qian saw this and knew what her Lang Jun was thinking. She came over with Byron and said with a smile, Didn't Xiaohua say it before? Everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own mission in life. Xiaohu's mission is to revitalize the Misty School. Xiaohua's mission is to establish the Beidou School. Then, what's Xiaolong's mission? It's to live a good life with Lu Qian and raise the famous Zhang Byron. Zhang Xiaolong said with a smile. Yes, mother's and father's mission is to raise you 3 brothers. However, I feel that being able to meet you, take good care of you, and live a happy life with you is my life's mission. Zhang Xiaolong held Lu Qian's hand and said softly. In the pill refining room in the Misty Palace, 7 majestic 8 trigrams purple gold furnaces were melting. Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged and couldn't hear the cheers of the Misty School disciples outside. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't comprehending the heavenly Tao, nor was he practicing the Carefree Heart Sutra. Instead, he frowned slightly and carefully recalled some of the truths that he saw in the river of karma. Yes, the way of karma was a side of the heavenly Tao. How could Zhang Xiaohua come into contact with karma at the Qi refinement stage, and even wade into the river of karma? With Zhang Xiaohua's current cultivation, how could he understand the taste of it? All he could think about was what he saw in the river of karma with his naked eye. Of course, the most profound was the scene in the water bubble related to his dream's mother, Lady Aya. Although the scene in the water bubble was very short, it was enough to leave a deep impression on Zhang Xiaohua. This was because on Zhang Xiaohua's journey to find out about his dream's background, Lady Aya was described as kind and capable. This also caused Zhang Xiaohua's impression of Lady Aya to be a mixture of a mother and a sister-in-law. In short, she was kind with a hint of shrewdness. But, in the water bubble, Lady Aya was holding a dagger and killing an old monk. The dagger was stabbed into the old monk's abdomen. Blood splattered everywhere and sprayed on Lady Aya's body and Lady Aya's face. This scene was frozen. Lady Aya's face was also ferocious. Zhang Xiaohua could even see the bloodthirsty expression in Lady Aya's eyes, that cruel red light. Sigh, Lady Aya, what kind of story does she have? Zhang Xiaohua sighed. There is a saying in the Buddhist scriptures, lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. No matter what kind of past Lady Aya had, or how violent she was in the past, her last years were peaceful and peaceful. Perhaps she also became a Buddha. But if Meng knew that her mother had such a hurtful past, what would she think in her heart? Meng, are you, in a foreign land, okay? Unconsciously, Zhang Xiaohua missed his dream in the Tenria sect again. But he forgot that the Tenria sect was Meng's home, and not the foreign land that Zhang Xiaohua thought. Thinking about how he and Meng were separated more often, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but feel sad. He had just found Meng at Lingxiang Peak when he was sent to Huansu. After returning from Huansu, he finally got the chance to go out with Meng. But in just a few months, they were separated again. But it seemed that only by separation could he appreciate the sweetness of reunion. It seemed that only by continuous separation could he deeply appreciate the unforgettable yearning and love of each other. After thinking about it for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with bitterness. He shook his head slightly. At his age, he could only understand this bitterness. How could he understand the meaning behind it? Life was full of joys and sorrows. If he did not taste them one by one, how could his life be complete? Shaking his head, Zhang Xiaohua released his divine sense and carefully looked at the elixir in the cauldron. Then, he took out Venerable Fiery Dragon's jade bamboo slips from his money bag and looked through them carefully. Venerable Fiery Dragon's orthodoxy was very complicated. There were all kinds of strange techniques, formations, and even elixir recipes. But none of them were particularly profound. Furthermore, Zhang Xiaohua had already discovered that Venerable Fiery Dragon's techniques were all about cultivating the lower dantian. None of the techniques involved the middle dantian. Thinking about the techniques that he had seen in the Misty School's Hall of Legacy, it seemed that they were all about cultivating the lower dantian. Could it be that cultivating the lower dantian is not unique to martial arts? Could it be that the Immortal Dao seniors changed it based on the techniques of the Immortal Dao? But why does the Carefree Heart Sutra cultivate the middle dantian? Could it be that the Carefree Heart Sutra was not passed down by Wan Wuxin and the other Immortal Dao seniors? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself and rolled his eyes. Senior Huan said that the mystic realm existed before they came. The Carefree Heart Sutra of the Misty School came from the mystic realm. It might really be a technique from before the Immortal Dao. But then again, although there are different techniques, they all seem to cultivate the meridians. And there are only so many meridians in a person's body. At the end of cultivation, wouldn't it be a different method to achieve the same result? -4. Chapter 11:14. Another 10 days passed. Zhang Xiaohu was sitting in the meeting hall with a teacup in his hand, gently blowing the steam off the teacup. His eyes were squinted as he stared at the ground, unconsciously sending the tea into his mouth. In the meeting hall, Zhang Xiaohu expanded the Misty School into 11 halls. When the Misty School's disciples saw that the Misty School's strength had increased greatly, their hearts were filled with hope. While working hard on their cultivation, they also increased their vigilance, preparing to welcome the Righteous Alliance's attack. However, according to the Divine Machine Hall's report, the Righteous Alliance's righteous peak was as calm as usual, as if the Misty School's counterattack had never happened. What's going on? Zhang Xiaohu was bewildered. Could it be that they're afraid of the incense cult? But I heard that the Righteous Alliance had also spoken harshly at the incense cult's martial arts assembly. The incense cult's Nun Jingyi had also cleanly distanced herself from the karma. The Misty School is the Misty School. It has nothing to do with the incense cult. The Righteous Alliance wouldn't be so afraid of Nun Jingyi's face. Could it be that they're afraid of the immortal expert that Xiaohua is impersonating? Zhang Xiaohu's guesses grew. But even our Misty School's ordinary disciples know that the immortal expert did not act because of the enmity between the Righteous Alliance and the Misty School. She killed Ban Fugui in anger because of some azure flame token. This news must have already spread to the Righteous Alliance. Moreover, the immortal expert would not participate in the battle of martial arts. The Righteous Alliance also did not know that the immortal expert was Xiaohua. Why would they bide their time? Hurt, it's so troublesome. Zhang Xiaohu rubbed his head. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind Zhang Xiaohu. What are you thinking about? Zhang Xiaohu shuddered, and the teacup in his hand almost fell to the ground. Before he even turned around, he scolded. You have no respect for your elders. Xiaohua, don't you know that you can scare someone to death? Why do you always appear behind me like a ghost? Zhang Xiaohua walked over from behind with an aggrieved look on his face. He sat on a chair and supported his head with his fist. He stared blankly at the ceiling and murmured, "Sigh, what a bitter life. It wasn't easy to refine the soul-intimidating pill. I wanted to give someone a surprise, but I didn't expect my face to stick to someone's butt. Sigh, forget it. If I had known earlier, I would have gone back and teased Byron." What? When Zhang Xiaohu heard this, He threw down his teacup and jumped over. Before he could get close, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and grabbed his wrist. She scolded. Don't you know that you can scare people to death? Don't be so inconsiderate and sit there obediently. Eh? Then Zhang Xiaohua raised his eyebrows again, as if he had discovered something. However, after being surprised, he didn't say anything. Heh, Xiaohua, you're my biological brother. You've been peeing on my head since you were young. Let me tell you, why are you like this? When we were young, I also spanked your butt a lot, right? There's no reason. Why are you angry? Zhang Xiaohu comforted. Second brother is not joking with you, right? You also know that it's really boring for second brother to sit in this position. I have to keep a straight face every day to maintain the dignity of the big faction leader. Once I relax a little, people might gossip about me. Sigh, they always compare me with Big Faction Leader O. How deep do you think Big Faction Leader O's foundation is? How can I dare to compare myself with him? Zhang Xiaohua was just teasing Zhang Xiaohu. When she heard Zhang Xiaohu's complaints, she abandoned her posture and laughed. Second brother is also an almighty person. Just now I saw that this misty school was actually divided into 11 halls by you. You're much stronger than me. As the ancients said, nobility, generals, ministers, nobles, generals, and ministers are all equal. With little brother supporting you, are you afraid that the whole Jianghu won't be able to hold your hand? The whole Jianghu? Hold my hand? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Even the disciples of Xiangism and the Righteous Alliance can't handle it. How can you talk about the whole Jianghu? Fine, I knew it. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't in a good mood. She pointed to the secret room and said, There's a box in the secret room. Inside are 21 jade bottles. Each bottle contains 81 soul-scaring pills. There's a total of 1,701 pills. It should be enough for a while. So many? So fast? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and blurted out. Haha, of course. I didn't expect it either. However, this soul-scaring pill can't be compared to the meridian-soothing pill. It doesn't test the level of alchemy. It only cares about the rarity of the herbs. Also, I got a few of your Misty School's pill furnaces. My pill furnace is even better. I can refine a furnace in a few days. It's an unexpected surprise. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, Xiangism has more than 2,000 disciples and the Righteous Alliance has nearly 5,000 disciples. I estimate that you'll be able to refine it 4 more times. Oh my, second brother. So many people. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. How many herbs would I have to waste? No wonder people from the path of immortality don't refine these messy things. It's really meaningless. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Xiaohua, you're not in the situation. You don't know how difficult it is. If these nearly 8,000 people all listen to me, don't you think it'll be very easy for me to be the sect leader? Yes. Others may not listen, but I'll listen. However, second brother, you have to confirm the specific number of people. I can't give you even 1 more pill. Zhang Xiaohua said seriously. Yes. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a moment and nodded. How about this? Other than the soul-scaring pills that these people are using, how about you give me 10 more? Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation. No problem. However, you'll have to take the soul-scaring pill this time. I don't have the patience for nearly 2,000 people. I might as well go and refine some more. Zhang Xiaohu said decisively. Okay. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng are already very obedient. I'll take care of these things for them. Then, he smiled and said, The path of immortality is really magical. These 2 people don't look like they've taken the soul-scaring pill at all. Other than obeying my words and treating me as the sect leader, everything else is exactly the same as before. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Of course, he knew better than Zhang Xiaohu what the soul-scaring pill was. He didn't want Zhang Xiaohu to do anything outrageous with it. So, before refining it, he comprehended the things in the jade slip and the poison scripture for a long time. He even put in a lot of thought when refining it. This soul-scaring pill, other than making the person who took it recognize Zhang Xiaohu as the sect leader, had nothing to do with life and death. Even if Zhang Xiaohu ordered Ming Qing to die, Ming Qing might not listen. Of course, even if Zhang Xiaohu let the number one beauty in the pugilistic world take the soul-scaring pill, that beauty would only recognize Zhang Xiaohu as the sect leader. She wouldn't have any thoughts of giving herself to him. Yes, didn't I say before that Zhang Xiaohua's products are all the best? Do I need you to praise me? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Second brother, come closer. I'll tell you how to use the soul-scaring pill. Okay. Zhang Xiaohu said and moved his ear closer. But after he finished listening, a strange expression appeared on his face. He said in a flustered and exasperated manner, Xiaohua, you can't play me like this. Can you change it to something else? Zhang Xiaohua spread out his hands and shrugged. He said helplessly, There's no other way, second brother. Since it's already like this, I'll think of another way next time. But isn't this a little too mushy? Zhang Xiaohu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's nothing. Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and made a hand gesture. He disappeared into the ground and left his voice behind. Go on with your work. I won't disturb you. I'm going to see father and mother. Don't go. Zhang Xiaohu stretched out his hand, but how could he stop her? Sigh, this person. Zhang Xiaohu said and shouted. Disciples outside, summon Deputy Faction Leader Ming and Deputy Faction Leader Gao to my meeting hall. He got up and went to the secret room. Indeed, there was a big box in the corridor. He didn't know where Zhang Xiaohua got it from, but when he opened it, there were 21 jade bottles neatly arranged inside. Zhang Xiaohu reached out and took a few bottles. The rest were placed in the box and hidden in a hidden place. Not long after, Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng arrived. Zhang Xiaohu didn't explain and brought them to the martial arts lecture hall. At this time, the martial arts lecture hall was gradually taking shape. It had a bright courtyard, elegant rooms, and diligent disciples. It was in full swing. Zhang Xiaohu whispered a few words in their ears. Although they were extremely surprised, they still nodded and left. Then, the disciples of the martial arts lecture hall divided into several groups and entered Zhang Xiaohu's room one by one. They called it heart to heart. When the first disciple entered the room, his acupoints were immediately sealed by Zhang Xiaohu. He poured out a soul-frightening pill from the jade bottle and stuffed it into the disciple's mouth. After a while, when the pill was about to take effect, Zhang Xiaohu unsealed the disciple's acupoints. The disciple did the same as Zhang Xiaohua, closing his eyes. But Zhang Xiaohu put his mouth near the disciple's ear. He hesitated and sighed, whispering, I love Qingqin. Hearing this, the disciple immediately opened his eyes. Then his eyeballs turned nimbly and turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu. He cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Faction Leader Zhang. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and waved his hand. He said, You can leave. Let the next disciple in. Yes. The disciple was very obedient and went out at once. Then it was the next disciple. At this time, Zhang Xiaohu had glimpsed the way of immortality. With the support of Zhang Xiaohua's primordial stone, there was genuine qi in his meridians. The disciples of the incense school were caught off guard and were all tricked by Zhang Xiaohu. However, no one heard Zhang Xiaohu say, I love Qingqin. Zhang Xiaohu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, there were more than 1,000 elixirs. How could they take them one by one in a short time? After seeing Zhang Xiaohu's heart-to-heart talk, the disciples who came out were all in high spirits, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. The other disciples who didn't have a heart-to-heart talk all shouted that they also wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk today. Zhang Xiaohu said helplessly, Disciples, you are all disciples of the Misty School. I won't favor one and discriminate against the other. Just wait. I'll have a heart-to-heart talk with you tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But he snickered in his heart. I can't do it today. I really have to tell Qingqin this. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please collect me. Please tip me. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:15. Another 10 days passed, and Zhang Xiaohu was still in the meeting hall. He was sitting on a chair listlessly. Normally, the soul scare pill refined by Zhang Xiaohua was extremely useful. Zhang Xiaohu had already controlled more than 2,000 people of the fragrance cult, and thousands of important disciples of the decent alliance called Zhang Xiaohu Grand Faction Leader. Zhang Xiaohu should be very happy and excited. But it was Zhang Xiaohua's strange password that tortured Zhang Xiaohu like this. Yes, the password of the earliest batch was, "I love Chin Chin." Zhang Xiaohu said it 1701 times in the ears of strangers. The password of the second batch was changed to, "I love Chang'e," and Zhang Xiaohu said it 1701 times in the ears of another batch of strangers. Alas, I don't know, what will he change it to in the next batch? Zhang Xiaohu was secretly distressed. However, he had to shout it. If he didn't shout it, when the disciples' acupoints were unsealed, he would definitely be exposed. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohu saw it with his own eyes. When testing the soul scare pill, Zhang Xiaohua did murmur something in Wang Lun's ears. "What a bitter life!" Zhang Xiaohu patted his forehead. He really didn't know what to do with his younger brother. At this time, a disciple suddenly came forward to report. "Grand Faction Leader Zhang, there are 2 women outside the villa." 2 women? Zhang Xiaohu heard it, and felt a headache. His mind was full of, "I love Chin Chin," and "I love Chang'e." He couldn't help but feel angry. He waved his hand and said, "I don't want to see them." "Yes, Grand Faction Leader's order." The disciple heard it, and immediately turned around. "Wait, they? Which sect are they from? Why do they want to see me?" Zhang Xiaohu asked casually. The 2 women were travel-worn and didn't say their names. They only said they were from Rejuvenation Valley. Rejuvenation Valley? Zhang Xiaohu stared blankly for a moment before he burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, the heavenly axiom is fair. It's not that I don't want revenge, it's just that the time hasn't come yet. Once the time has come, those who have worries and those who have grievances will take revenge." "Ah? Gang leader Zhang?" Seeing Zhang Xiaohu like this, the disciple was shocked and exclaimed, "Could it be that sect leader Zhang is sick?" Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. He snorted coldly and said, "Humph, you didn't see anything just now, do you know that?" The disciple immediately nodded. "Yes, I just reported that someone outside the villa wants to see you." That's good. Go, let those 2 girls in." "Yes, disciple understands." The disciple left and muttered in his heart, "Good boy, this thing must be done well. I can't let Chang'e and Chinchin know about it. If they know that it was me who sent the news in, they will suffer a lot." Because this matter involved Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaohu didn't let anyone into the meeting hall. However, this confirmed the disciple's thoughts. Looking at the 2 girls, one was young. Although she wasn't very beautiful, her eyes were bright and her temperament was elegant. Although the other was cold and ignored people, she had a beautiful face and snow-white skin, which made people feel pity for her. Compared to Chang'e and Chin Chin, she was much better. "Sect leader Zhang!" "Really?" The disciple praised in his heart, and quietly left, not forgetting to close the door of the meeting hall. Zhang Xiaohu didn't know what the disciple was thinking. After the disciple left, he asked with a smile, "Are you both from Rejuvenation Valley?" The beautiful girl with snow-white skin stepped forward and saluted with her hands folded. "Sect leader Zhang, you don't remember me? This girl? I don't seem to have seen the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley. I wonder if this lady is Little Fish Nye? Oh no, Nye Qianyu? Ah?" The short girl next to her, who didn't seem to have developed well, exclaimed with a surprised smile on her face. Then she blushed and felt embarrassed. "Haha, I see. This girl must be Nye Qianyu. Xiaohua often mentioned you in front of me." Zhang Xiaohu struck while the iron was hot. What did he say?" Nye Qianyu asked in a low voice, her face blushing. This? Zhang Xiaohu pinched his chin and said, "What did he say?" "I'm too embarrassed to say it out loud. Anyway, he missed the happy times when you were together." Zhang Xiaohua was indeed the sect leader of the Misty School. During this period of time, she was like a fish in water. It was not without reason. Nie Qianyu was so clever. If he said too much, she would definitely find out. However, the sentence, "He missed the happy times when you were together," was exactly what Nie Qianyu thought, so she took it seriously. However, the girl next to her looked as cold as ice again. Ahem, this girl. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. He had heard Zhang Xiaohua mention Ye Qianyu from Rejuvenation Valley. How come, there was another one? Humph. The woman snorted and said, "Grand Gang Leader Zhang, you're really forgetful. When I was on Shixin Peak, I told Senior Sister Qinchin about His Excellency's decree." Ah? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. After a long while, he stammered as if he had seen a ghost. You are Zhang Pinger?" Zhang Pinger nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I am. But, you are not in Lihua Hall on Linxiang Peak. Why did you go to Rejuvenation Valley?" Zhang Xiaohu gradually steadied his mind. He rolled his eyes and said, "You're alone. If Little Flower..." "Oh no. Xiao Yao." "Oh no, Little Flower knows. Wouldn't she be worried about you?" "Ren Xiaoyao will be worried about me?" Zhang Pinger sneered. "Of course." Zhang Xiaohu looked at Nie Qianyu and said, "Xiaohua often talks about you." Zhang Pinger was not as gullible as Nie Qianyu. She asked curiously, "What did Ren Xiaoyao say about me to sect leader Zhang?" "Well, he said you, cough, very good." Zhang Xiaohu coughed twice and changed the topic. He asked, "Oh right, Junior. Sister Zhang, why did you go to Rejuvenation Valley? Was it Nanjing's arrangement? Or was it Lihua Hall's arrangement?" "Nanjingi?" Zhang Pinger frowned and then smiled. "No, I am just a small Lihua Hall disciple. How could I enter Nanjingi's eyes? It was your brother. I don't know if I should call him Zhang Xiaohua or Ren Xiaoyao." "Ah? Xiaohua can arrange for an inner disciple of Lihua Hall to go to Rejuvenation Valley?" Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. Sect leader Zhang is wrong. I was no longer a disciple of Lihua Hall at the Martial Circle Convention on Huayu Peak. "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohu was even more shocked. He asked curiously, What is going on? That's strange. Sect leader Zhang, doesn't senior brother often talk about me in front of you? Why? Didn't he tell you that I left Lihua Hall?" Zhang Xiaohu was embarrassed. He touched his nose and said, "He rarely tells me such a secret. Alas, this is very strange. It also affects Lihua Hall's reputation. Although I left Lihua Hall, I can't tarnish Lihua Hall's reputation. Sect leader Zhang, please pretend you don't know about this." Zhang Pinger was very miserable. "Yes, I know." Zhang Xiaohu nodded. "Sect leader Zhang, I wonder, is Xiaohua in Misty School?" Nie Qianyu finally asked. Her voice was very low, but it was full of anxiety. "Oh, this..." Zhang Xiaohu hesitated. "What? He is not here?" Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger asked at the same time. They looked at each other and felt a little embarrassed. Then, they looked at Zhang Xiaohu together. "Yes, Zhang Xiaohua is not in Misty School," Zhang Xiaohu said firmly. "I see." Both of them were disappointed. They asked again, Then where did he go? Can sect leader Zhang tell us the truth?" "Of course." Zhang Xiaohu touched his nose and laughed in his heart. Xiaohua, I have taken my revenge today. Don't blame me." "Then where did he go?" Both of them asked anxiously. "Oh, he went to Huanqi Villa," Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. "Huanqi Villa?" Both of them looked at each other, puzzled. Nie Qianyu asked tentatively, "Sect leader Zhang, where is Huanqi Villa? How far is it?" "Well..." Zhang Xiaohu pretended to be hesitant again. "Sect leader Zhang, please don't worry. We just want to ask him something." Zhang Pinger understood Zhang Xiaohu's difficulties and said sincerely, "Of course, I know your relationship with Xiaohua. There is nothing to hide." Zhang Xiaohu said, "Huanqi Villa is next to Ethereal Villa. It is about 4,000 feet away." "But where is Ethereal Villa?" 400 miles, which direction?" Zhang Pinger frowned and thought. Nie Qianyu was stunned. She looked at Zhang Xiaohu's teasing expression and smiled bitterly. "Sect leader Zhang, you don't have to joke with us. When we came in just now, it seemed that there was a plaque of Ethereal Villa hanging at the door of Misty School. 4,000 feet. Isn't it just next to it?" Zhang Pinger realized and blushed. She was a little angry. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohu laughed and stood up. "Let's go. You too, sisters-in-law, Xiaohua is right next to us. You can see him in a few minutes." "Ah?" Zhang Pinger and Ye Qianyu both blushed, but then they were overwhelmed by surprise. Is he really next to us?" They were still worried. "Yes, he is next to us." Zhang Xiaohu nodded. "But..." Faction leader Zhang. Zhang Pinger's face was burning, but her eyes were calm. She said, "Faction leader Zhang, please take back the word sister-in-law. If Zixia heard it, we would be ashamed." Zixia. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu patted his forehead. He had Chang'e and Qingqin, but Zhang Xiaohua had Meng, Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger. How could he bear it? "Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you." -4. Chapter 11:16. "Zhang Xiaohua, are you kidding me?" Zhang Xiaohua scolded. "It's all your fault. Why are you dragging me into this? I've already told Owner O that the Huanxi Manor is still hers. She can stay here for as long as she wants." Elder Yu walked to them and bowed. "I'm sorry for not being able to see your true face. I'm sorry for treating you so poorly." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. "Elder Yu, you are also here to join in the fun?" "I'm not here to join in the fun. I just want to say that the Huanxi Manor will belong to faction leader Zhang sooner or later. Miss O has no right to stay here, and it's not good for faction leader Zhang." "But..." "Miss O has a high status. Where can she go in the Jianghu? It's better for her to become your disciple so that she can be protected. Please forgive me." "Well..." Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. She looked at the kneeling Nie Qianyu, Zhang Pinger and O Yan and sighed. "You can all get up." Seeing that the three of them were not moved by her words, she had to say, "I can take you in, but you're different from Xiaohua Ji and Zhang Byron. You're my peers. How can you call me master and disciple?" Nie Qianyu smiled. "Master? Didn't you say that you're a disciple of Beidu's school and that you're here to teach us? Can we call you senior martial brother?" "But..." Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Beidu's school hasn't been established yet. I was the only one there before. Now there are two kids, Xiaohua Ji and Zhang Byron. How can I have a master?" "Ah?" Nie Qianyu was also stunned. Then she smiled and said, "I don't care. I've already practiced the mental cultivation method of Beidu's school. Anyway, I'm going to be a disciple of Beidu's school. I don't care if I call you senior brother or master." Zhang Pinger's pale face regained some color. She said in a low voice, "If it's senior martial brother, that would be the best. If it's not, then master. Anyway, you promised to take me in." O Yan was still very experienced. She raised her head and said, "It's normal for people in the Wulin world to pass on their master's skills. It's even more normal for a senior martial brother to be the head of the sect. I've never heard of a senior martial brother who just started a sect. However, since Master wants to start a new sect of the Immortal Tao, he naturally has a new atmosphere. If he wants to abandon the old and take on the new, it's not impossible for him to be the senior martial brother who starts a sect." However, Elder Yu shook his head. "There's an old rumor in the martial arts world. In the past, a few good friends practiced martial arts together. One of them attained the Tao and started a new sect. The other friends wanted to learn this Tao, and all of them became his disciples. They called him master, and no longer followed the previous order. Ha! Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have come up with a plan. She shook her head and said, "There's a hierarchy in learning the Tao. I have the Tao in my heart, so I can be your teacher. But Shifu and Xixiang are just titles. Isn't it all the same? As long as you respect me as your teacher in your heart, why can't you pass on the orthodoxy of Beidu school to me?" O Yan, Nie Qianyu, and Zhang Ping'er were overjoyed when they heard this. They said in their beautiful voices, "Greetings, Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader!" "Haha, but Senior Martial Brother likes to call himself Master. Don't mind him." Zhang Xiaohua waved her big sleeves and said, "You all can wait. There are still some things that need to be said." "Yes, Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader." The three of them stood up and said with smiles. Zhang Xiaohua pointed at Nie Qianyu and said, "Little fish Nie has already learned the mental cultivation method of our Beidu school. She should be the eldest senior martial sister." Greetings, eldest senior martial sister." Zhang Ping'er and O Yan smiled and saluted. Nie Qianyu's face flushed red, and she obediently returned the salute. "When I left the Xiangxiang cult and saved Zhang Ping'er from Garuda, I already promised to take her as my second senior martial sister." Greetings, second senior martial sister," O Yan said with a smile. "Greetings, second junior martial sister," Nie Qianyu said. The three of them saluted each other. "O Yan, although you're the oldest, you're ranked last. Are you willing?" Zhang Xiaohua said. O Yan replied without hesitation, "No, I won't." Greetings, junior martial sister." Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er were overjoyed. The three of them saluted each other for the third time. "Well, although you're my junior martial sisters, the first disciple of our Beidu school is Zhang Byron. You must respect him." "Ah?" Seeing that Zhang Byron was still a child, the three of them couldn't help but feel a little funny. However, looking at Zhang Xiaohua's serious face, the three of them subconsciously stopped laughing and bowed. "Greetings, Martial Nephew Byron!" Zhang Byron was playing on the David's deer. When he heard the three of them saluting him, he turned his head and laughed. He lifted his leg and peed on the David's deer's back. The three of them covered their mouths and were about to laugh when Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Don't underestimate Byron. The prosperity of our Beidu school will definitely depend on Zhang Byron in the future. You will also follow Zhang Byron in the future, and bask in his glory." "Yes, senior martial brother. We understand." The three of them nodded. "Well, Ji Xiaohua greets the three junior martial uncles." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and called Xiaohua over. Ji Xiaohua stepped forward and saluted the three of them seriously. The three of them also saluted back politely. It was as if they were a normal Jianghu sect now. After everyone finished saluting, Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Leader Zhang, for accepting 3 disciples." Zhang Xiaohua glared at him and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. I'm far worse than your more than 7,000 loyal subordinates." No, it's quality not quantity that matters," Zhang Xiaohu replied. "I remember that Dragon Mountain also has a disciple of Leader Zhang. Including him, Leader Zhang's Beidu school already has 6 disciples." "Ha!" Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "An old friend said that there are 7 stars in the Big Dipper. The first is Tianshu, which is the Ximing star. The second is Tianxian, which is the Xilu star. The third is Tianji, which is the Lutzun star. The fourth is Tianquan, which is the longevity star. The fifth is Yuheng, which is the fortune star. The sixth is Kaiyang, which is the calamity star. The seventh is Yaoguang, which is the compassionate star. Collectively, they are known as the 7 stars. I have only accepted 6 disciples, and I'm still short of 1. When my Beidu school finds a paradise and opens a sect, I will build the 7 palaces of the Big Dipper, named Tianshu Palace, Tianxian Palace, Tianquan Palace, Yuheng Palace, Kaiyang Palace, and Yaoguang Palace. I hereby appoint you as the Ximing Star Lord, Xilu Star Lord, Lu Xiyuan Star Lord, Longevity Star Lord, Fortune Star Lord, Calamity Star Lord, and Compassionate Star Lord. Only then will you show the atmosphere of my beta school. Everyone was overjoyed. How could a Jianghu sect say such words? Wasn't it the atmosphere of an immortal? They all bowed and said, "Thank you, senior brother sect leader, for bestowing names upon us." Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head. After a moment of heroism, he said to O Yan, "You are the youngest junior sister, and have read the most books. As for the specific distribution, I will leave it to you." Everyone laughed. Only O Yan pursed her lips and smiled. She bowed and said, "Please rest assured, senior brother sect leader. This disciple will not disappoint senior brother." Then she probed, "I just don't know, where will our beta school be established? This disciple can make plans early, such as buying land, buying mountains, and so on. This matter is also extremely complicated." Now, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be stunned. He opened his mouth for a long time, but not a word came out. Yes, he wanted to establish a sect, but he just touched his lips and said it out loud. Yes, Zhang Xiaohua also had some cultivation methods and artifacts in his money pouch, so establishing a sect was not bad. However, he did not expect that establishing a sect would not be as simple as playing house. Looking at the order of their identities, the three of them greeted each other happily 3 times. Of course, it was because they were happy, but more importantly, it was because they were curious. If it was a real sect, how could it be so complicated? With just one sentence, the three of them had established their identities. They just had to greet each other. Therefore, after listening to Oyan's suggestion, not only did Zhang Xiaohua stop talking, but Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er also stopped talking. Yes, Qi Xiaohua stared blankly. Even if Zhang Byron wanted to say something, he could not say it all. Master's thinking is too simple. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and looked at Oyan, saying, "If I didn't accept you, my beta school probably wouldn't even buy rice from the pot." Oyan laughed out loud and said, "Senior brother sect leader, you're exaggerating. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Only by taking advantage of each other's strengths can we complement each other. Senior sisters, you two are proficient in cultivation and can practice our sect's martial arts well. As for this disciple, I'm good at management, so I'll take care of the sect's chores." Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er looked ashamed. Needless to say, Zhang Ping'er was not familiar with these things. Nie Qianyu had also managed Rejuvenation Valley, but she had always been giving orders. Theory was more than practice. Otherwise, she would not have run out to manage things for Nie Qianyu to increase her experience. Therefore, the two of them bowed and said, "Thank you, junior sister." "Well said, well said." O Yen beamed with joy. She was not proficient in martial arts and felt somewhat guilty. How could she not be happy when she saw that she could work for beta school? But then she frowned and said, "Senior brother sect leader, how big is our beta school?" "Just based on the Big Dipper Palace, then it's not much worse than Misty School. As for the wealth, although this disciple has some, but—" Then she turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu was now the leader of Misty School and also knew the importance of logistics. When he saw Oyan look at him, he immediately understood. However, before he could speak, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Of course. Master forgot that since ancient times, emperors did not lack hungry soldiers." As she spoke, she waved her hand, and dozens of large chests and countless gold, silver, and jewelry were thrown on the ground. She pointed at them and said, "Oh Yen, I'll leave these things to you. It's really tiring for Master to carry them. They can't be used, right? They also take up space. Do as you see fit." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. He took a few steps forward and opened a chest. It was filled with gold. He said in shock, "Xiaohua, where did you get all of this?" "Hee, you'll feel better after hearing this. These are all gifts from the Righteous Alliance to I," Zhang Xiaohua said with a grin. Then, as if she suddenly thought of something, she instructed Oyan, "There's food from my Zhang family in here. Don't forget! Oh Yan was first dumbfounded. She was shocked at how much wealth Zhang Xiaohua had, but she was even more shocked at the divine powers of the immortal Tao. This was the first time she was seeing an immortal Tao technique. She really did not know how the dozens of chests and the gold, silver, and jewelry scattered on the ground were produced. However, when she heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, she could not help but laugh. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11-17. Don't worry, senior brother. I know what I'm doing. Oh Yan smiled. All right. Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and said, You've acknowledged the sect and found your senior brother. Let's go about our own business. There were still 7-8 trigrams purple gold furnaces in the ethereal palace refining elixirs. Zhang Xiaohua was just taking a break from his busy schedule and came out to take a look. He still had to help Zhang Xiaohua completely control the disciples of the Righteous Alliance. Senior brother. Nie Qianyu could not accept it and asked, Junior sister and I just arrived. What should we do? Little fish Nie. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but use his original tone. He patted her head and said, Since you're already here, are you afraid that you won't be able to see each other? If you're free, slowly teach Oh Yan the mental cultivation method I taught you. She's the same as you and can't practice martial arts. See if she has a chance to see the way of immortality. Thank you, senior brother! Oh Yan was so happy that she almost jumped up. Oh yes, little fish Nie, how's little Orange's injury? Thank you for your concern. Thanks to your elixir, little Orange's injury is fine. Her broken arm has been reattached. Speaking of little Orange, Nie Qianyu was a little worried. She said, She heard that I was coming to Pingyang City and wanted to follow me. But you know her situation. I'm afraid she can only leave Rejuvenation Valley next year. Yes. Zhang Xiaohua was a little guilty. Of course, if I went earlier, oh yes, senior brother, I have something to ask. The first time I met you, the flying sword, do you still need to ask? Zhang Xiaohua said impatiently. I can't hide it from you even if I want to. Why do you have to ask? I knew it. Nie Qianyu beamed with joy. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Zhang Ping'er, whose face was still cold but her eyes were still flickering. He said, Ping'er, you've already practiced the fragrant cult's inner strength mental cultivation method. You should walk the path of immortality through martial arts. I obtained like water from the fragrant cult's martial arts convention. When you've mastered martial arts, you can set foot on the way of immortality. Thank you, senior brother! When Zhang Ping'er heard Zhang Xiaohua call her Ping'er, she was very happy, but her mouth still said, Disciple has left Chuan Xiang Jiao and will no longer practice Chuan Xiang Jiao's martial arts. Your disciple is incompetent. I can't abandon the previous martial arts, but I definitely don't need to impart the incense cult's martial arts to the future martial arts. All right. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and said, Let's do as junior sister says. My beta school. I'll look around again and see if there are any books on martial arts entering Dao. Thank you, senior brother sect leader. However, my martial arts skills are still shallow and I won't be able to use it now. That's right. If junior sister hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten about it. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out a jade bottle from her bosom. She poured out a pill and handed it over, saying, This is a meridian nourishing pill. It can increase your strength by 10 years. Take it and find a time to take it. Ah? Joy appeared in Zhang Ping'er's eyes. She reached out to receive it and said in a low voice, Thank you, senior martial brother! At this moment, she could no longer maintain the cold expression on her face. I want it! Zhang Byron, who was riding on the back of the David's deer, had a sharp nose and wanted to grab it. How could Zhang Xiaohua not give it to him? She poured out another pill. Zhang Byron didn't hesitate and threw it into his mouth. He stretched out his hand and wanted it. Zhang Xiaohua hit his chubby little hand and said with a smile, You don't know what you're eating. Such a precious pill, one is enough. Zhang Byron seemed to understand. His attention was diverted again. He grabbed Huan's bald horn and played with it with a smile. However, when Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and was about to put away the jade bottle, she noticed that everyone was looking at her strangely. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Zhang Xiaohua looked at them strangely. That? Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader, can you give me one pill? Nie Qianyu asked hesitantly. You don't need it now. Zhang Xiaohua replied without thinking. Your mental cultivation method hasn't been initiated and there's no true qi in your meridians. This pill, you can't refine it. But my father, can he use it? Nie Qianyu's voice became even softer. Valley Master Nie had obtained the support of Zhang Xiaohua pretending to be an immortal expert. He had already underestimated Zhang Xiaohua. When Zhang Xiaohua had visited Rejuvenation Valley last time, she had been slightly rude. Nie Qianyu was afraid that Zhang Xiaohua had other ideas in her heart. Zhang Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then nodded. He took out 2 pills from the jade bottle and handed them over. He said, one for Valley Master Nie and one for Elder Shang. Your fate with the Immortals is over, so don't ask for more. I understand. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader. Nie Qianyu took it and quickly took out the jade bottle from her bosom and put it away. Then, Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader, I would also like to ask for one. Oyen said when she saw the situation. You. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. When she saw the envy in Elder Yu's eyes, she already knew. She smiled brightly and said, Fine. Every disciple in my sect, regardless of age, will be given one pill. She then handed the jade bottle to Oyen and said, There's still one pill left. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader. Oyen was overjoyed. Xiaohua, I'll take your pill first. It won't be too late to give it to you when you've mastered your mental cultivation technique. I understand. I'll listen to Master's instructions. Xiaohuaji said respectfully. Oh right, Huan is back. I'll leave it to you in the future. I probably won't need it in the future. Yes, Master. Then she saw Zhang Xiaohu's gaze on her and waved her hand. Second brother, don't look. There's no more meridian soothing pills. I've already given you so many. Are you still greedy? No. Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, I suddenly thought of a question and wanted to ask you. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger and said, You two should find a place to rest first. This is your junior sister's villa. Let her make the arrangements. Oyen smiled and said, There's no hurry. We've joined the Big Dipper sect, but we haven't told Uncle and Aunt the good news yet. You 2 senior sisters have also just arrived, so you should do your best. Zhang Xiaohua didn't think much of it and nodded. Go. Let's get closer. Who knows, we might live together in the future. Senior Brother Sect Leader will go now. The 3 of them bowed and left with smiles. Qiu Tong, Elder Yu, and Xiaohuaji also went back. After they left, Zhang Xiaohu pulled Zhang Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, I just remembered. Although I have some true qi in my meridians, it's still very little. How do you think I should use it against an enemy? This was indeed a problem. However, in front of Zhang Xiaohua, who had always used the Tao of Immortality as the Tao of martial arts, it really wasn't worth mentioning. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out a small sword. She didn't use her divine sense to drive it, only using the telekinesis technique to control the flying sword. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. Can I use it? Of course. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, When I have time, I'll copy down the telekinesis technique and have Nie Qianyu give it to you. You can practice it according to the method. This can also be considered the telekinesis technique I've seen. Ah? Then what about the more complicated ones? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Without any movement, the small sword flew in the air like lightning and instantly split into 8, shuttling back and forth around Zhang Xiaohu. Ah! It's so powerful. Looking at the flying sword that barely reacted to him, Zhang Xiaohu's heart itched uncomfortably. Oh right, second brother, give me the broken water sword. Zhang Xiaohu took out the short sword from his chest. Zhang Xiaohua took it and slightly channeled her true qi into it. Immediately, a 3 feet long sword light appeared, shining on their faces. Second brother, try channeling true qi into the sword like true qi. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned for a moment, then immediately became overjoyed. He slapped his forehead and said, How could I forget this? Sure enough, after taking the broken water sword, Zhang Xiaohu channeled true qi into it, and a 1.5 foot long sword light suddenly appeared. Zhang Xiaohu raised the sword and performed the Misty 7 Swords once, feeling incomparably carefree. When the last move came, Zhang Xiaohu roared and jumped up. After slashing at a large rock beside him, the rock split open like a piece of tofu. Good. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands. Second brother's martial arts. Who in the entire Zhenghu can compare to you? Xiaohua, I'm sorry. Zhang Xiaohu said modestly. Oh, also, do you still remember the soaring dragon cultivation technique? You can use it with true qi, try it. It was still the same rock. Zhang Xiaohu used the soaring dragon cultivation technique, and his true qi triple fold hit the rock. With a pu sound, the large rock turned into ashes. Powerful, Zhang Xiaohu himself cried out. In the past, his inner qi would definitely not have such power. Oh right, Xiaohua, using true qi to imitate inner qi is so powerful, why don't you use it, but use your strength? Zhang Xiaohu thought of something. With inner qi, don't you need an inner qi cultivation technique? I don't have the opportunity to obtain any inner qi cultivation technique, and the time I have to practice it is short, so it is easy to arouse the suspicion of others, so I might as well use my strength to subdue others. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. You have sword arts and palm strength, so what's left is qigong. You can use true qi to replace inner qi to practice ethereal steps, and you will have unexpected gains. Good. Zhang Xiaohu rubbed his hands and said, Can I also fly like you? And if you practice to the end, of course you can, but it depends on your level of practice. This flying technique was also obtained from your Misty School. Although I don't know if it is an inheritance from the Misty School, if second brother wants to learn it, I will definitely teach it to you. Good. Zhang Xiaohu was so happy that he scratched his ears and cheeks. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua frowned, looked outside and said, Second brother, there are disciples from the Misty School coming from afar. They seem to be looking for you. You go busy yourself, I will go to the pill room and refine the soul-frightening pill as soon as possible. Xiaohua, you have worked hard. Zhang Xiaohu held Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, When you get married, I will definitely give you 3 big gifts. Zhang Xiaohua shook her hand and said, Don't mention this again or else I will change into your appearance. Don't mention it. Zhang Xiaohu felt a little guilty. Are you afraid, second brother? You have to be honest. I haven't seen you for more than 10 days. How did you refine so much true qi in your dantian? Moreover, there is a faint trace of primordial yin force. It can't be? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. This, you even know this? What do you mean? Solitary yin doesn't grow, solitary yang doesn't grow. Isn't the black and white qi in your dantian the way to balance yin and yang? Only when yin and yang intersect, the dragon and the tiger help each other, can true qi be endless and grow endlessly. Zhang Xiaohua said seriously. But this, you should tell father and mother. Zhang Xiaohu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, Forget it, I don't want to talk to you. You are just a kid, and you only took in 2 beauties. Although you didn't take them as your disciples, they look no different from disciples. How can you understand the romance? Gang leader Zhang? A Misty School disciple's voice came. Zhang Xiaohua twisted her body and went underground. She said, It's not like I won't grow up. I will understand sooner or later. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11-18. As soon as Zhang Xiaohua left, the misty school disciple entered the courtyard. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua alone, he smiled and cupped his hands. Reporting to gang leader, this disciple has good news for gang leader. Zhang Xiaohua was startled. Most of the Misty School's disciples on duty were selected from the Misty School's Divine Machine Hall. They were relatively steady and cautious disciples. He had never seen such a disciple come forward to report before. He couldn't help but frown. Seeing this, the disciple knew that he was overjoyed. His expression changed to one of panic. Just as he was about to explain, Zhang Xiaohu suddenly understood. He clapped his hands together and said excitedly, "Mo! Elder Hu and the others are back?" The disciple nodded and replied, "That's right. Elder Hu is currently leading 2,000 Misty School disciples. Elder Li and the others have already gone to welcome them at the entrance of Ethereal Mountain Villa. This disciple saw that our Misty School disciples are finally reunited. I also forgot myself." "Ha!" Zhang Xiaohu laughed. At this moment, so what if I forgot myself? Let's go. Quickly bring me to welcome the Misty School disciples. Yes, gang leader. The disciple ran out with a smile. Outside Ethereal Mountain Villa, Huyuni was standing under the archway. He stared at the two words, ethereal, for a long time. At this time, Huyuni's hair was completely white. The wrinkles on his face were even more prominent. His originally tall and straight waist was now somewhat stooped. Cough, cough. A series of hurried coughs came from Huyuni's mouth. Then, his waist bent even more. It was a child about 10 years old. He had delicate features and looked quite graceful. He was standing beside Huyuni. At this moment, he hurriedly took a few steps forward. He stretched out his small hand and rhythmically patted Huyuni's back. His other hand took out a jade bottle, poured out a scarlet pill, and handed it over. Huyuni took it and swallowed it without even looking. After a while, Huyuni's coughs gradually stopped. "Great Grandmaster, are you better?" the child asked. Ahem, it's nothing. Tian, it's just an old problem. I'll be fine after taking some medicine. I'm already used to it." "But, Grandmaster, you've been taking this medicine for such a long time, and your condition often relapses." "Is it, Sai? Grandmaster is already so old. That's all there is to it. What else can it be? Great Master Ancestor, now that we have returned to the Ethereal Mountain Villa, you don't have to worry about it. Take good care of your body. In the future, let my father and the others worry about the matters in the gang." "Your father?" Huyuni turned his head and looked at a man in his 40s standing not far away. He shook his head slightly, but then nodded. "All right. Grandmaster will listen to you this time. Daddy is the deputy leader of our Misty School. He is the one who can lead the entire Misty School. Great Grandmaster, don't worry." While they were talking, a few shadows came out of the ethereal heights like gusts of wind. "Eldest senior apprentice brother," the figure in front of them called out excitedly. "Boss Hu, you're finally back." A short and fat figure also ran out of the ethereal heights. Before he even saw Huyuni, he already shouted loudly, "Second brother, fifth brother." Huyuni called out in surprise and unconsciously quickened his steps. "Big brother." Li Jian ran to the front with his qingdong and grabbed Huyuni's hand. His eyes were red and slightly watery. "Big brother. You. Why have you become so old?" Li Jian looked at Huyuni's snow-white hair and said with heartache, 5 years ago. Your hair was just white. 5 years have already passed. How many 5 years do we have in our lives?" Huyuni smiled and patted Li Jian's hand. "Look at you. Isn't your hair all white? 5 years ago, your hair was pitch black. Boss Hu. Your complexion. Did you not eat breakfast this morning?" Lu Qingyang also ran to the front and looked at Huyuni's appearance. He found it very strange. "Fifth brother Lu," Li Jian scolded. "How can you talk like that?" Fifth brother is right. In order to see you guys, I did not eat breakfast. I'm still waiting to enter the ethereal heights to eat." Let's go, let's go. I have to accompany Boss Hu to eat a few cups. Lu Qingyang laughed and pulled Hu Yuni's hand. This was not a big deal, but Hu Yuni was caught off guard and was almost pulled to the side. Big brother. You. Lu Qingyang felt that something was wrong and asked very strangely. Li Jian also felt that something was wrong. He reached out and felt the pulse on Hu Yuni's hand. A strand of internal energy went through Hu Yuni's meridians and immediately turned pale with fright. Big brother, hee, it's fine, it's fine. Hu Yuni waved his hand disapprovingly. It's been so many years. At this time, Wen Wahai, Lu Yueming, and Shui Qing, who came out with Li Jian and had been waiting for a while, also stepped forward and bowed. Greetings, senior uncle. Ah hi, Xiaoming. Oh ah Qin hee. Seeing O Peng's disciples, Hu Yuni seemed to be happy and sad. He thought of O Peng and Zhang Qinghua who died in the ethereal heights. Get up, get up. You guys, are you all okay? Hu Yuni reached out and pulled the three of them up. He wiped the tears that were about to flow out and asked with a smile. Senior uncle, we're all good. Shui Qing smiled and said, we're just waiting for senior uncle to come back. This way, the disciples of my misty school will be gathered again. Yes, I've also been waiting for this moment. If I can return to the ethereal heights, I can die in peace. Hu Yuni was quite emotional. Wen Wahai, Shui Qing, and Lu Yueming were stunned. They looked at each other and did not dare to ask more. By the way, come Tian, greet your senior uncles. In the future you'll have to rely on their support in the ethereal heights. Hu Yuni smiled and turned to the child. The child looked calm. He took a few steps forward and bowed graciously. Disciple greets senior uncles, 2nd Grand Master, and 5th Grand Master. Shui Qing smiled and said, Child, get up quickly. It's not that I haven't seen you before. It's just that after not seeing you for a few years, you've already become a little adult. Yes. I didn't feel it when I was young. Now that I look at you, you're actually similar to Qingyu when he was young. You both look mature. Lu Qingyang stretched out his fan-like hand and patted Tiantian's little shoulder. Isn't that so? Tiantian's aptitude is exceptional. She has cultivated our ethereal sex legacy martial arts to an extremely high level. She will inherit Qingyu's legacy. 4th brother and Qingyu should be able to rest in peace in the underworld. Hearing this, Li Jian frowned slightly and looked at Wen Wahai, who was also frowning. Hu Yuni didn't seem to see it. He turned back and said, Faction leader Shui, aren't you coming to meet your old subordinate? The man who had been waiting for a long time came forward with a face full of smiles. He cupped his hands and said, Greetings Elder Li and Elder Lu. Shui Yupeng? Vice Faction leader Shui? Lu Qingyang was stunned and said, You bastard, where have you been all these years? I have almost forgotten about you. Shui Yupeng was a little embarrassed and replied, Elder Lu, the Misty School was destroyed and the Luo Shui faction was also surrounded by the Xian Rong faction. I tried my best to escape, but I heard that you all went to the Incense faction. I couldn't find Elder Hu, so I could only mix with the brothers of the Luo Shui faction in the Jianghu. However, the Daolan Temple didn't seem to want to let me go, so I could only run and run. It wasn't until recently that I found Elder Hu and reunited with the disciples of the Misty School. A few years ago, it wasn't easy for me to take care of the disciples. On one hand, I had to teach Tiantian martial arts, and on the other, I had to take care of some chores. It wasn't until faction leader Shui came that I was free. He's the vice faction leader of our Misty School. Hu Yuni smiled and said, However, I didn't work for nothing these years. Look, when I left, I took hundreds of young Eagle Hall disciples with me. Now, there are 2,000 disciples. As he spoke, he waved his hand and said proudly, It's enough to be of great use. Big brother, it's been hard on you. Li Jian smiled and helped Hu Yuni into the Misty Mountain Villa. At this time, a voice sounded from inside the Misty Mountain Villa. Master Hu, welcome back. When Li Jian looked, it was Zhang Xiaohu who hurried back from the Huanxi Mountain Villa. When Li Jian saw him, he pointed at Zhang Xiaohu and said with a smile, "Big brother, this is Ah Hai's disciple. You should have seen him before. He's now the big faction leader of our Misty School." Big faction leader? Hu Yuni glanced at Zhang Xiaohu, who was walking over, and said coldly, "How come I don't know this?" Li Jian was stunned and said with a smile, "Big brother, did you forget? The last time you sent Chu Yunfei over, he had already seen big faction leader Zhang. Chu Yunfei has seen it before, but I have never seen it before. I know this Zhang Xiaohu and know that he's Ah Hai's disciple, but I only know that the chief disciple of our Misty School is Zhang Qingyue. Qingyue's direct disciple should be Tian Tian. Even Ah Hai isn't qualified to be the big faction leader. How can his disciple be qualified to be the big faction leader?" Hu Yuni said without any trace of politeness. At this time, Zhang Xiaohu had already arrived in front of Hu Yuni. When he heard Hu Yuni's words, he frowned and looked at Hu Yuni's old face and the stubbornness in his eyes. He couldn't help but sigh and bow. "Disciple Zhang Xiaohu greets Master Hu. Not bad. It's best to know your mistakes and change for the better." Hu Yuni was quite appreciative of Zhang Xiaohu's bow. He waved his hand and said, "I know this isn't your fault. You were also forced to be the big faction leader by that old beggar Jingyi. However, since my Misty School's disciples have returned, you don't have to be the big faction leader of the fragrant cult. It's better to give it to my Misty School's direct disciple." "Big brother," Li Jian said in a low voice. "Big faction leader Zhang. What big faction leader Zhang? There's no big faction leader Zhang in front of me." Hu Yuni waved his hand. Master Hu, these are all small matters. Your return to the Misty Mountain Villa is the most important matter. I'll ask you and your Misty School's disciples to come to the Misty Mountain Villa first. And that's what a junior should be like." Hu Yuni nodded with satisfaction and turned to Tian Tian. "Tian Tian, you have to learn from your senior brother. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you." -4. Chapter 11-19. "Yes, Grand Master, I understand." Tian Tian smiled and saluted Zhang Xiaohu. "Greetings, senior brother Zhang." Before Zhang Xiaohu could return the salute, Hu Yuni said, "Wrong, it's senior brother Zhang. Big brother, you." Lu Qingyang came to his senses and asked, "What about me?" Hu Yuni glared at Lu Qingyang. Lu Qingyang shrunk his neck in fear and said, "Nothing, nothing. All right, big brother, let's go in first. The wind is strong here, and your body," Li Jian said with concern. "Yes, Grand Master Hu, let's go to the meeting hall first," Zhang Xiaohu also said. Then, he turned and ordered a disciple. "Go and call Deputy Hall Master Lu of the Foreign Affairs Hall. Tell him to settle down the 2,000 disciples who came from afar." "Yes," the disciple answered and left. When Hu Yuni heard this, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Foreign Affairs Hall? Second brother, when did our Misty School have a Foreign Affairs Hall? Why didn't I know about it?" Li Jian smiled bitterly and helped Hu Yuni up. "Big brother, let's go in first. When we reach the meeting hall, you can rest for a while and then talk. How about that? Sai, look at you. You've only been back for a few days and you've already messed up the Misty School's rules. If fourth brother knows about this, will he be able to rest peacefully in the underworld?" Hu Yuni did as Li Jian said, but he was blaming them as he walked. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes narrowed when he heard this, but he immediately calmed down and acted as if he didn't care. Li Jian supported Hu Yuni in front and looked at Zhang Xiaohu, who was standing next to him. He nodded slightly at him and left first. Zhang Xiaohu was supposed to be walking in front, but when he saw this, he didn't walk and just stood there quietly. Lu Qingyang didn't know and called out, "Sect leader, aren't you going?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled. "Elder Lu, you go first." "Oh." Lu Qingyang followed his two senior brothers and left, followed by Shui Yuping and Tian Tian. Shui Yuping knew that this wasn't the time to be courteous, so she cupped her hands and didn't say much, pulling Tian Tian into the villa. Let's go, Xiaohu. Wen Weihai walked in front of Zhang Xiaohu and patted him on the shoulder with a bitter smile on his face. Of course, Hu Yuni was the most senior elder in the Misty School. Even the former leader of the Misty School, O Ping, had to be respectful in front of him. Needless to say, people like Wen Weihai couldn't even muster the will to resist. Yes, master. Zhang Xiaohu nodded with a smile. He followed Wen Weihai, Lu Yueming, and the others as they slowly entered the Misty Mountain Villa. The disciples in the Misty School had already received the news. Many people had rushed over and stood in the square to welcome the senior and junior brothers who had been with them day and night, as well as the new disciples who had joined the Misty School. However, when they saw the haggard Hu Yuni, everyone felt sad and reverence for him. Is everyone well? Hu Yuni walked to the steps of the meeting hall and turned to look at the familiar faces in the square. He couldn't help but think of more familiar faces that he couldn't see again. His heart ached slightly as he waved his hand and said, Greetings, Grand Elder! The disciples in the square shouted in unison. Everyone is back. I am finally back. Hu Yuni was filled with emotion. His eyes were a little blurry. He choked with sobs for a moment and said, The Misty School has finally stood up again. I believe, with the concerted efforts of the disciples of the Misty School, the Misty Mountain Villa will sooner or later rise again in the Jianghu and regain its former glory. Yes, let's work together and regain our glory. The disciples were also excited and shouted in unison. Hu Yuni smiled and nodded. He turned to look at Shui Yupeng and Shui Tiantian and pointed at them. Just as he was about to speak, Li Jian quickly grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, Big brother, let's go in and talk. You! Hu Yuni frowned and wanted to break free. However, how could he compete with Li Jian at this moment? With half a push, he followed Li Jian into the meeting hall. As soon as they entered the meeting hall, Hu Yuni pulled his hand back and scolded. Li Lao Yu, what is the meaning of this? Me? Li Jian pretended to be angry and said, Big brother, it's windy outside. Why are you still standing at such a high place? Can't you talk to the disciples when the weather is better tomorrow? Anyway, we are back and the days ahead are long. We will have plenty of opportunities in the future. Don't you think so? Li Lao. Hu Yuni stared at Li Jian for a moment. He wanted to say something but didn't. Only when everyone entered the meeting hall did Hu Yuni swallow his words. He waved his hand and walked to the seat of honor. Then, Hu Yuni clasped his hands behind his back and stood in the middle of the meeting hall. He quietly looked at the seat of the Grand Elder in the meeting hall without saying a word. Not long after, everyone came in and stood in front of their seats. None of them dared to sit down. Li Jian walked to Hu Yuni's side and said in a low voice, Big brother, the disciples have all come in. Let's sit down and talk. Sit down? How do we sit? When Hu Yuni heard this, he pointed at the chair in front of him and said, My seat is easy to talk about, but what about this chair? Who should sit there? Li Jian didn't expect Hu Yuni to be so stubborn. He didn't even wait for a private discussion before putting this question on the table. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, he still put a smile on his face and said, Big brother, this seat is naturally for my Misty School's Grand Elder. Then Zhang Xiaohu, who had been quietly standing behind him, said, Zhang Xiaohu is the Grand Elder of my Misty School. Of course, he should sit there. The Misty School's Grand Elder? Hu Yuni sneered. My 2,000 disciples don't seem to know. Li Jian continued to smile and said, Big brother, you must be joking. When I left Spreading Fragrance School that day, I didn't know where you were. How could I inform Big brother? Therefore, without Big brother's approval, I pushed little Hu to the Grand Elder's seat. This is my fault. I will apologize to Big brother later. Hu Yuni sighed and said, Li Lao, you and I are brothers. How can I blame you? I just want to ask. You, Li Lao, and Lu Lao can sit in this seat. Even if you don't want to take Lao's inheritance, Wouldn't it be the same if a Hai or Xiaoming sat there? Why did you choose a Hai's disciple? Then, looking at Zhang Xiaohu, he hesitated and said, He isn't a disciple of my Misty School. Big brother, you don't know. Our situation in Spreading Fragrance School is difficult. Sitting in this seat is really inconvenient. Ha ha ha, Li Lauer, you finally got to the point. Why is it that your situation is difficult, and his is smooth sailing? Why is he favored by the old beggar Jingyi? Not only did he name himself as the chief disciple of the Misty Sect, but he also directly named himself as the sect master of the Misty Sect. Hu Yuni finally laughed out loud and said, Can't you use your brain to think? When did he come from Misty School? He has no foundation at all. How can the old beggar Jingyi favor him? If he is not a spy sent by Spreading Fragrance School, how can you explain all this? Big brother. Li Jian was a little loud again. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu, who was smiling and almost squinting his eyes. He said, Little Hu is definitely not a spy like Big Brother said. This, I, Lauer, and all the disciples of Misty Hall on Shishing Peak can testify. Are the people of Spreading Fragrance School here? Hu Yuni suddenly asked. No, Big Brother. They are in Martial Arts Lecture Hall and Martial Arts Discussion Hall. Because Big Brother came back, he didn't let the two deputy leaders come. Haha, what Martial Arts Lecture Hall, what Martial Arts Discussion Hall, what two deputy leaders? Hu Yuni sneered and said, One Grand Elder, two deputy leaders, and two halls. They are all from Spreading Fragrance School. Is my Misty School still a Misty School? Without waiting for Li Jian to speak, Hu Yuni continued, The Grand Elder of my Misty School is a disciple of my Misty School. If he is not a disciple of my Misty School, is this Misty School still a Misty School? Is the Grand Elder of Spreading Fragrance School conferred by the old beggar Jingyi the Grand Elder of my Misty School? Is he the Grand Elder that we should acknowledge? Looking at Li Jian, Hu Yuni said, Second brother, I know the pain in your heart. I also know the situation of my Misty School. Therefore, this time, I also steeled my heart and brought these 2,000 disciples back to support you. Although the Misty School has many disciples arranged by the old beggar Jingyi, she has already admitted to the entire Jianghu that she will no longer interfere with the internal affairs of the Misty School. We are going to use this weakness against her and kick out the Grand Elder that was not elected by the disciples of my Misty School. We will let the true direct disciple of my Misty School sit on the Grand Elder's seat so that fourth brother's legacy can continue. As Hu Yuni spoke, he became a bit agitated and anxious. Unknowingly, he started coughing again. Shui Tiantian quickly went up and handed over a pill. Hu Yuni took it, and after a while, he was finally able to breathe normally. He pointed at Shui Tiantian and said to everyone, My Misty School's head disciple is Zhang Qingyue. This child is Qingyue's direct disciple. Qingyue died and could not inherit fourth brother's legacy, so this child should naturally inherit it. Seeing that all the disciples of the Misty School were silent, Hu Yuni pointed at Shui Yuping and said, Even if Tiantian is still young and cannot manage the Grand Elder's affairs, Vice-Sect Leader Shui is my Misty School's Vice-Sect Leader. He is also Tiantian's father. If Tiantian cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty School, then Vice-Sect Leader Shui will naturally become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. When Tiantian grows up, she will inherit her father's legacy and become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. In short, Hu Yuni pointed at the gloomy-looking Zhang Xiaohu and said, In short, the appointed Grand Elder of the Misty School absolutely cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. Big brother. Li Jian's expression turned cold as he said, You came back to tell us this? You want to compete with Little Hu for the Grand Elder position? Of course not. Seeing Li Jian's unyielding attitude, Hu Yuni smiled and said, I came back to revitalize the Misty School. But if the Grand Elder position of the Misty School is taken by a disciple of the Misty School, then how will revitalization? -4. Chapter 11:20. Sigh, since that's the case. Li Jian's expression relaxed when he heard that. He smiled and said, That's good. Then I'll use the facts to argue with you. Go ahead. I'd like to see how that old beggar Jingyi will convince you. Yes, I'll convince you. Li Jian looked around and said, Everyone, please take a seat. You're all the backbone of our Misty School. This position concerns the development of our Misty School. All of you can listen and express your opinions. Everyone nodded silently but didn't sit down. They only looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and sat on the right side of the leader's seat. He nodded at everyone and they sat down. Big brother, please take a seat. Li Jian pointed at his seat and smiled. This is Big Brother's seat. When Big Brother wasn't around, I secretly sat there for a few days. Hee hee. Hu Yunyi smiled. Maybe it'll be your seat in the future. Li Jian was stunned. Big Brother, what do you mean? Hu Yunyi didn't answer. He looked at the seat beside Zhang Xiaohu and said to Shui Yuping and Shui Tiantian, You two sit there. Shui Yuping brought Shui Tiantian and walked quickly to Zhang Xiaohu's side. They nodded and sat down. All right, second brother. If you have something to say, just say it. Li Jian looked at Zhang Xiaohu and asked. Leader, now, the time is right. Can I say it? Zhang Xiaohu knew what Li Jian wanted to say. He smiled. Even if you don't say it, I'm sure Elder Hu won't agree. Since everyone in the meeting hall is from Misty School, just say it. Yes, as you command, Grand Faction Master. Li Jian nodded. He looked at Hu Yunyi's unhappy expression and said, Big brother, your injury seems to be very serious. Did you suffer it when you broke out of the Misty Peak's back mountain? Yes, I was hit by a consecrator from the Alliance of Righteous Sects. It hurt my vital organs and I haven't recovered yet. Hu Yunyi nodded. Since Big Brother was heavily injured while breaking out of the encirclement, then I'm sure Big Brother already knows what happened to us. Well, that's for sure. You've all been crippled of your martial arts. You've been captured by the fragrant cult. Hu Yunyi sighed. I know that because you've lost your martial arts, you can't resist the fragrant cult. That's why you brought the 2,000 disciples back. Eh? Big brother, didn't we tell Chu Yunfei to tell you that we have recovered our martial arts? Li Jianqi asked. Of course, Chu Yunfei did. He even said that there was a senior from the Immortal Path who was related to the Misty School that helped Zhang Xiaohu recover all of your martial arts. Hu Yunyi said disdainfully. I know that you guys are deliberately mystifying. You're using the empty fort strategy to confuse the incense cult, but big brother, it's true. Lu Qingyang jumped up and shouted. Chu Yunfei, that brat, saw me walking, and I was worried for a long time. How can you recover your martial arts when they've been crippled? And even if I'm not the chief disciple, I've never heard Master say that there's a senior from the Misty School that's on good terms with us. If there's really a senior from the Immortal Path who could chase you to the fragrant cult, then why didn't he appear when the Misty School was destroyed? That day, as long as he appeared on the Misty Peak, he didn't have to recover the martial arts of the thousands of disciples. Why do you think he didn't do the simple things and insisted on doing the complicated things? Li Jianqi nodded and shook his head. What Hu Yunyi said was quite reasonable, but it was true that he had recovered his martial arts. Who knew why the senior from the Immortal Path didn't appear at the critical moment of the Misty School's destruction? Why did he have to wait until the Misty School was destroyed? It's useless to say more. Li Jianqi laughed. Big brother, look! Li Jianqi pulled out the long sword at his waist. His face was slightly purple, and the tip of the long sword was 3 fingers long. Ah? Sword? Hu Yunyi couldn't sit still. He stood up and asked, Second brother, you really recovered your martial arts? Not only that, big brother, there's me too. Lu Qingyang couldn't help but walk up to Hu Yunyi and say, That day, my joints were crushed by the monks of the Daolan Temple. I couldn't even stand up. Senior uncle, we really recovered. Wen Wahai stood up and smiled. No way, really? Hu Yunyi was stunned. He pointed at the others and asked, You all recovered? Yes, senior uncle. Thanks to sect leader Zhang, we all recovered our martial arts, everyone said. However, in order to not attract the attention of the fragrant cult, we still pretended that we didn't recover our martial arts. This? Hu Yuni was speechless. He waved his hand and asked everyone to sit down. His tone was pleasantly surprised. That's good. With your martial arts recovered, the strength of the Misty School will reach a higher level. We don't have to worry about the disciples of the fragrant cult. Then, he seemed to think of something and changed the topic. However, this was done by the senior who has a deep relationship with our Misty School. It has nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohu. They just borrowed his hand. Haha, big brother, you have to think about it. Why didn't the senior find someone else but Zhang Xiaohu? It was a coincidence, Hu Yuni replied. Big brother, that day at Shixin Peak, Zhang Xiaohu was the only direct disciple of our Misty School who didn't lose his martial arts. Although the senior gave Dufeng and Ding Chao 10 years' worth of martial arts, he didn't give them the important task of recovering our martial arts. What do you think the senior meant by this? But Zhang Xiaohu's identity. Don't worry, big brother. Zhang Xiaohu is definitely not a disciple of the fragrant cult. When he came to our Misty School, he didn't know any martial arts. Moreover, the fragrant cult respects female disciples. Even if the old beggar Jing Yi had a premeditated plan, she would still choose Yang Ruping. Hu Yuni thought for a moment and nodded. There's no need to argue about this. You've received such a big favor from him. Of course, you have to speak up for him. Perhaps this was also premeditated by Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu sat in his chair, quietly listening and watching. It was as if he didn't care that this was a farce. Well, since Big Brother said so, then I can only admit it. I've received such a big favor from Zhang Xiaohu. Naturally, I have to repay him. Although the old beggar Jing Yi wanted him to be the leader of the Misty School, he's also the candidate that all the Misty School disciples want. Li Jian sneered. But Big Brother is referring to a 10-year-old child. What qualifications does he have? He wants to be the leader of the Misty School as soon as he comes? Does he have the grace of being reborn to our Misty School disciples? Or can he pull our Misty School disciples out of the puppets of the fragrant cult? Is it just because he's the direct disciple of our Misty School's chief disciple? Li Jian looked at Hu Yuni and said, although Zhang Xiaohu isn't Zhang Qingyue's disciple, he's still Wen Wenhai's disciple. He's also the direct disciple of fourth brother. There's nothing wrong with that. Moreover, the leader of our Misty School doesn't have to be based on seniority. Didn't Big Brother give the position of chief disciple and leader to fourth brother? This? Hu Yuni was speechless. There's also deputy leader Shui. Li Jian looked at Shui Yupeng and said coldly. Presumably, deputy leader Shui knows that the reason why fourth brother promoted Shui Yupeng to deputy leader is for the sake of the development of our Misty School. He wants to integrate the Luo Shui gang and the Misty School. If deputy leader Shui can stay in our Misty School for another 10 years and integrate into our Misty School, then, at this time, this Li will definitely persuade Zhang Xiaohu to step down and give the position of deputy leader Shui to someone who knows the ins and outs of our Misty School. Pitifully, deputy gang leader Shui has only stayed in our ethereal sect for less than 2 years and has only shown up in Huanxi Manor for 4 or 5 times. Now you want to seize the position of the grand gang leader of our ethereal sect? Do you think you can rely on the fact that you used to be our deputy gang leader? Second brother, are you saying that you're going to support Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yuni asked. Big brother, it's not that I support him, but it's the choice of thousands of our Misty School brothers. Even if you have to fall out with Big Brother, you still want to choose Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yuni asked coldly. Big brother, it's not a matter of falling out or not. As I said, we have to make a wise choice for the development of our Misty School. Your choice is Zhang Xiaohu? Yes, our choice is faction leader Zhang. If you don't believe me, Big Brother, you can ask them. Li Jian turned around and pointed at the crowd. But, the 2,000 disciples I brought with me, all support Shui Yupeng? Hu Yuni asked with a smile. 2,000 disciples? Li Jian hesitated and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak, Hu Yinyi said, "Second brother, you're right. We have to choose a capable leader. This is what you and I think. I don't want to embarrass you, but Shui Yuping used to be the leader of Luo Shui faction and is now the deputy leader of our Misty School. He's much better than Zhang Xiaohu in terms of martial arts, prestige, and ability. He's the best choice for leader of our Misty School. You can't delay the righteousness of the faction because of your personal feelings." "Capable?" Li Jian sneered. "Can Shui Yuping handle the disciples of Fragrance Cult and the disciples of the Righteous Alliance?" "What do you mean?" Hu Yunyi asked curiously. Zhang Xiaohu took in the disciples of the Incense Cult into the Martial Teaching Hall and the Martial Discussion Hall. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng, the two vice-sect leaders, listened to him. He also took in the disciples of the Righteous Alliance into the Jinwu Hall and the Great Martial Hall. Wang Luan and Lu Bin, the two hall leaders, also followed Zhang Xiaohu's lead. "Can Shui Yuping do the same?" Hiss. Hearing this, Hu Yunyi sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. After a while, he said, "Shui Yuping might be able to do it, but how can we prove it now? Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:21. Li Jian said with a smile. "That's right, big brother. We can't prove it. Faction leader Zhang has subdued Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng from the Fragrance Cult, and Wang Luan and Lu Bin from the Alliance of Righteousness. Shui, vice-faction leader Zhang can't do that." Hu Yunyi thought for a while and looked at Zhang Xiaohu and Shui Yuping. He sighed and said, "Li Laoer, to be a faction leader, one must have qualifications, prestige, and martial arts. Since you've put aside qualifications, I won't mention that Shui Yuping is the former vice-faction leader of Misty School. What about prestige? It can't be solved in a short time. Besides, Zhang Xiaohu has some prestige in Misty School. He can barely be compared with Shui Yuping. This. Li Jian looked at Hu Yunyi with anger on his face. "Big brother, you mean you want Grand Faction leader Zhang to compete with Shui Yuping in martial arts? Li Laoer, then, tell me, what else can you do? Convince the 2,000 men I brought with me? Convince Shui Yuping and Shui Tiantian? And you still have to convince me? Ha, big brother." Li Jian got angry and laughed. Shui Yuping was a famous master in Jianghu even before she entered Misty School. Although her martial arts cultivation is a little weaker than faction leader O, but how can faction leader Zhang compare with her? Big brother, I won't agree with your idea. And no matter what, faction leader Zhang is the faction leader of Misty School in my eyes. Others, haha, if they want to be the faction leader, they have to convince me. That's right. Big brother. Sect Master Zhang is kind and benevolent. He has saved countless disciples of our ethereal sect. It was Sect Master Zheng's idea for us to come out of the incense-spreading sect. Otherwise, I would still be lying on the back mountain of Shixin Peak, basking in the sun. Li Laoer. Hu Yunyi stood up and said coldly, "Are you going against your big brother? Big brother, you are the big brother of the 6 ethereal tigers. You were in the past, you are now, and you will be in the future. I respect you from the bottom of my heart. It's just that. Please forgive me for being disrespectful when it comes to faction leader Zhang." Big brother. Lu Qingyang also shouted. "Big clan master is so good, why don't you like her? Eldest martial uncle, please reconsider." Wen Weihai, Lu Yuanming, and Xue Qing all stood up to dissuade him. When Hu Yunyi saw that everyone was trying to stop him, he frowned and hesitated. However, when he looked at Zhang Xiaohu, Shui Yuping, and Shui Tiantian, who were sitting quietly beside him, his expression became resolute. He waved his hand and said, "You have all seen Zhang Xiaohu's means, but I haven't. I want to see it. As people of the martial arts world, if we don't compete in martial arts, do we compete in rock, paper, scissors? Big brother, If that's the case, Li Jian didn't know why Hu Yi disliked Zhang Xiaohu so much or why he respected Shui Yuping so much. However, he was indebted to Zhang Xiaohu and had thousands of Misty School disciples behind him. He couldn't stand up for Zhang Xiaohu. Elderly Zhang Xiaohu, who had been silent all this time, stood up and said with a smile, "Let's do as martial ancestor Hu says." However, martial ancestor Hu must be tired after coming from afar. 3 days later, I will compete with Vice Faction Leader Shui in the square in front of the meeting hall. Then, he turned to Hu Yuni and asked, "Martial ancestor Hu, what do you think? Faction Leader Zhang? This isn't appropriate." Li Jian wanted to stop him. Hu Yuni nodded and said, "All right, I'd like to see what you're capable of in 3 days. By the way, for the next few days, can I still be in charge of the Misty School's affairs?" Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. "Of course you can if it concerns the other disciples. As for the disciples I brought, I'll have to wait 3 days. It's fine. The vice faction leader of the Young Eagle Hall is Martial Uncle Shuiqing. If martial ancestor Hu trusts her, let her make arrangements for these disciples first." "Yes, faction leader." Shuiqing bowed as if provoking Hu Yuni. Very good." Hu Yuni narrowed his eyes and said no more. "Old man, you've gone too far." In the alchemy room of the ethereal palace, Zhang Xiaohua was on the verge of exploding after hearing Zhang Xiaohu's story. He had been scheming since Shixing Peak and spent a lot of effort to win the hearts of the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. Wasn't it all to help Zhang Xiaohu become the faction leader of the Misty School? However, all the favors he had done for the Misty School and Zhang Xiaohu's hard work couldn't compare to Shui Tiantian's status as Zhang Qingyue's direct disciple. It couldn't even compare to a single word from Hu Yini. Forget it. Second brother, my Beta school still lacks disciples. Why don't you come with the 2 sisters-in-law? Although you can't become the faction leader, your future will definitely be better than that of the Misty School. Fuck off. How can your Big Dipper sect's 3 kittens and 4 puppies compare to our ethereal sect?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "I'm the faction leader of the Misty School now. If I chicken out at the last minute, not only will I be letting down Grand Master Li and my master, but also the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. How can I walk in Jianghu in the future?" Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head, stood up, and said, "Why don't I just stab that bastard called Shui Yuping to death with my sword?" "Don't." Zhang Xiaohu knew Zhang Xiaohua's tricks. He was so scared that he grabbed him and said anxiously, "Shui Yuping is a disciple of the Misty School anyway. He can't stand your ruthless methods. Besides, he's going to compete with me in 3 days. If he suddenly dies at such a critical juncture, who wouldn't know that it has something to do with me? Besides, with your second brother's current martial arts. I'm an immortal now. Why should I be afraid of him?" Zhang Xiaohu said proudly. That's how it should be." Zhang Xiaohua gave him a thumbs up and said, "I thought you asked me to impersonate you again. Is that necessary? I can't always rely on you." Zhang Xiaohu snorted disdainfully. Looking at the pale white flame and the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace above, he smiled and said, "This method of refining pills, when can you teach me?" Humph. Zhang Xiaohua also had the same face as Zhang Xiaohu. She pointed behind her with her chin and said, "Your Misty School's inheritance naturally has this alchemy method. Why are you coveting my Beta schools?" "Fine." Zhang Xiaohu stood up and said, "I'm going back to see my parents. Are you coming?" "Of course." Zhang Xiaohua also floated in the air. In a few blinks of an eye, she was at the door of the alchemy room. She smiled and said, "I haven't been back for a few days. Your soul-absorbing pill will be ready in a few days. I'm going to see my disciples. I'll wait for me." Zhang Xiaohu smiled and chased after her. When they were out of the restriction, Zhang Xiaohua asked, "Second brother, where is that guy?" "Which guy?" Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. However, he immediately understood and said, "He's at the Kitty Hawk Hall. He's arranged by Martial Uncle Shui. I think he's a direct disciple of the original Misty school. They can trust him. In. Zhang Xiaohua said and released her divine sense. Eh? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Her expression was very strange and she said, Guyuni is a skinny old man. I don't think. I've seen him in the Misty school before. Martial ancestor who is an elder of the Misty school. At that time, not to mention you, even ordinary Misty school disciples couldn't see him. Eh? You can see martial ancestor who now? Yes, he's talking to a boy around 10 years old. There's also an imposing man standing next to him. He, that boy seems to be the Shui Tiantian you were talking about. And it should be. The only one who can be with Elder Hu all the time is Tiantian. Ha ha ha, second brother, I don't know. If I tell you that I've seen this so-called Misty School's deputy gang leader, what would you think? That's strange. Shui Yupeng is the Misty School's deputy gang leader. And he seems to have participated in the martial arts exhibition. It's not strange that you've seen him. Why would I be surprised? Zhang Xiaohu didn't understand. It's different from what you think, second brother. During the martial arts exhibition, it was the first time I saw a disciple of the Misty School. There were so many people, how could I remember who? It wasn't long ago that I met Vice Gang Leader Shui. How? How is this possible? Shui Yupeng has always been with Elder Hu. How could you have seen him? Ha ha ha, when you know where I've seen him, I'm sure you'll be even more surprised. Tell me, where did you see him? Evil Tiger Gang. Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation. When I went from Shichui Mountain to the Evil Tiger Gang to kill the Blue Flame Token, I saw him outside Hungry Tiger Villa. At that time, he was with the Blue Flame Token's deputy gang leader Jiang of the Righteous Alliance. I thought he looked familiar. So that's why. That's impossible. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. After a while, he said faintly, Could it be Elder Hu has also joined the Righteous Alliance? This time, he came back because of the Righteous Alliance? And it should be. Otherwise, why hasn't the Righteous Alliance attacked after so long? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. The Righteous Alliance sure has a good plan. They've taken over the nest and chased you away, easily taking over Ethereal Sect and Nun Jingyi's thousands of fragrance cult disciples into their pockets. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, Since I know, I naturally can't let their evil plan succeed. Kill all of them. Zhang Xiaohua said noisily. No, killing for no reason will only make elderly and the others feel disgusted. Moreover, we can't explain it to the 2,000 Misty School disciples. It's very inappropriate. Second brother, don't forget, I know the bewitching finger. With a tap on his acupoint, that guy will say anything. You know how to say it, but the problem is, others will think that you did something and will suspect you first. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a while and said, Let's go, let's not talk about this for now. We'll talk about it when we get home. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua followed Zhang Xiaohu into Huanxi Villa. She still didn't look back and said hatefully, When I have time, I'll tap on this guy and see what they're planning. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.